Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to another 3 hours of exploring random places in Fallout New Vegas. The last edition of this video was very successful, so thank you guys so much for all of the support and watching these videos. Now, this is literally just 3 hours exploring and going into details about random locations throughout Fallout New Vegas. We could learn about the lore, go to places people might not typically kind of explore and find secrets, look at loot, pretty much everything. And also, this is a compilation of my series, The Unexplored Mojave. Many of my fans, many of you, wanted this video for various purposes, from driving, to sleeping, to studying, to working out, stuff like that. So please sit back, relax, crack open a cold one, and let's go patrol the Mojave. In the past, Mole Rat Ranch was home to many friendly mole rats, until one day when a Brahmin attacked. A crazed Brahmin came rampaging through the small farm, killing all but one of the mole rats. A guardian angel perhaps, or perhaps an extraterrestrial. It doesn't really matter. The Brahmin was slain, and one small mole rat remained. Snuffles. With no home or no family left, Snuffles left Mole Rat Ranch. He had a bad leg from the Brahmin attack, but he did his best to survive. He traveled southwards, following the scent of food, shelter, and safety, and avoiding danger at all cost. As he made his way across the wasteland, he had many close encounters, including fighting off some coyotes near Cannibal Johnson's cave, and watching a new friend of his being murdered by Cannibal Johnson, that absolute terrorist. Just south of Novak, he narrowly escaped Legion scouts patrolling the roads, and he even hid near the ruined overpass of Highway 95 as a gang of vipers tore apart a helpless merchant, his tiny heart pounding as gunfire echoed throughout the Mojave. And then finally, after dragging his weary body through the Mojave, relying on scraps of food and very little water, Snuffles found it. Sloan. This small mole rat with nothing more than a big heart and a lot of hope traversed one of the most dangerous places on Earth and made it to safety. What an absolute legend. Hello everyone, this is the Army of Otters, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Now from here on out, everything you see in this video is lore accurate. I just made up that fun story about Snuffles because why not? That was recommended to me a long time ago by Little Dre to chronicle the events of Snuffles' survivor from Mole Rat Ranch. Of course, we have no evidence that Snuffles survived Mole Rat Ranch, but hey, we can imagine, right? Anyways, today we're going to be checking out Sloan, which is a small town just east of Goodsprings. Now, of course, Sloan and nearly all of its inhabitants worked at Quarry Junction, emphasis on the past. Because now, of course, Quarry Junction is overrun with death claws, and Sloan has kind of fallen into a state of disarray, just because they don't have any income, really, at this point in time. Of course, they work for the NCR, and they mine for the NCR in order to produce cement. And here you can see the location of Sloan on the world map, just east of Goodsprings, northwest of Hidden Valley, and right next to Quarry Junction. I'm sure most players are familiar with it. Now, the first time that you visit Sloan, you will probably immediately notice there is actually a friendly mole rat here named Snuffles. If you've only played Fallout 3, then you know mole rats are usually always hostile. But in New Vegas, we do have a friendly pet mole rat. You might also notice that his left leg is injured, and if you have 30 medicine, you can actually repair or heal his leg, and then if you talk to Chomps Lewis, he will give you, well, a thank you for fixing Snuffles' leg, and he mentions that Snuffles is very big for the morale of the miners in Sloan. It's very wholesome, I have to say. And on top of that, you will also get some NCR fame. So hey, not bad, not bad. There's also a generator here that you can fix in another unmarked quest. And in order to do that, you'll need 35 repair skill, or you need 5 scrap metals, a conductor, and a sensor module. I already repaired it, so, I can't do it. And then we have the mining office, and inside of here we won't really find a whole lot. On the first floor, there's just like a billiards table, and then it's like some Sunset Sarsaparilla vending machines and lockers and stuff on like that. On the second floor, we can find a safe that has an average lock, and behind this picnic table, we have a very interesting discovery. There are a ton of bottle caps in these trunks. Of course, you can steal them if you would like, if you need the bottle caps. I didn't really know this existed until I made this video. However, this is of particular interest to me, and I'll explain why later. And then we have the worker barracks, and inside of here we can find a copy of Dean's Electronics and Duck and Cover. However, I already took both of these magazines way in the early game, and unfortunately you do have to steal them, so make sure the workers clear out of here like you can see here, and then you can easily take them for yourself. And it's not really very important, but I just wanted to point out behind all of these buildings there is an outhouse, and there's obviously nothing really to it, but this is where people use the toilet, so hey, there's that. Then if we head over to the other part of the town, we have the mess hall. And inside of the mess hall we can find Jazz Wilkins, who pretty much runs the shop, and she cooks for the miners. Now, if you talk to Jazz, she will actually give us an unmarked quest. You gotta break out a few eggs. During this quest, we will have to recover a Deathclaw egg in order to make a Deathclaw omelet. So this is a pretty fun, kind of cool little quest that we can do. Also, there's some references here to Fallout 2. She mentions her great Aunt Rose in MODOK, who created the omelet. And she will also mention that her mother had a pet Deathclaw, or a Deathclaw in a cage, until a stranger came along and killed it with a shot to the eye. Of course, this is all a reference to Fallout 2, and the Chosen One, who can optionally kill the quote-unquote chicken, which provides Rose's eggs, which is actually a mother Deathclaw. Also worth mentioning, in MODOK, there is an animal, in this case a cow, with an injured leg that the player can, of course, heal. So some pretty big references to Fallout 2 with this character. And then heading on over to Quarry Junction, which I've already cleared out, so it's safe for me. We can find some Deathclaw eggs in the back in this small cave. So we just pick up an egg, and also I never realized how much these things are worth. 400 caps, not bad, not bad. And then if we take the egg to Jazz, she will then cook us up a Deathclaw omelet. However, actually, when she finishes the omelet, it's actually called a Wasteland omelet. Only Jazz calls it a Deathclaw omelet. Kind of interesting, don't know why that is, but yeah, interesting, and we can get ourselves a Wasteland or Deathclaw omelet from Jazz. She'll cook it up, and she will also give you the recipe, so you can make it again whenever you want, but of course it requires a Deathclaw egg, which is not always easy to get, but hey, there it is, and hey, it is not worth 400 caps anymore, it's only worth 100. Well, that's a big rip. Anyways, on the table, also in here, we can find a Star Sunset Sarsaparilla bottle cap. If you need it in the early game, it is there. Then we can see the kitchen where there's mole rat meat. Oh my god, poor Snuffles. He needs to get the heck out of here before he is also eaten. And the last building we have to enter is the machine shop. However, you'll notice, as you just saw there, we're not supposed to be in here. And if you have a low reputation with the NCR, you'll actually be attacked if you enter this place. Now, I was thinking, like, why is this? There's just a workbench in here and some, like, terrible loot. Just junk, really. And then I noticed this machine. This machine looks kind of like the cap counterfeiting machine at the Sunset Sarsaparilla headquarters. So I decided to visit there and to see what it looks like, and lo and behold, it is the same machine. And from here on out, this is just my theory. There is no evidence on the internet to back this up. I actually searched for a long time to try and find other people who thought of this. I couldn't find anything, so this is my idea as far as I'm concerned. But you'll notice here at the Sunset Sarsaparilla headquarters, the machine that was used to counterfeit caps is identical to the machine here in Sloan. And as I mentioned earlier, Sloan has a crazy amount of caps, about 900 or 800 caps, in the mining office headquarters. I think this is really suspicious because in Sloan, they don't get paid in caps. They get paid in NCR money, as Chomps Lewis tells us.
We make cement for the NCR using the limestone we dig out with dynamite and drag lines. Dirty work, but the pay's good. Wish we got paid in caps, though. Not a lot of merchants like taking NCR paper money. Nope. The NCR has been trying to switch over to using paper money, just like in the pre-war days. Trouble is that the exchange rates ain't exactly fair. For example, $100 in NCR money is valued at roughly half that in caps around here. Seems like a rotten deal for us, but work is work.
And here we can see Chomps Lewis voice his dissatisfaction with being paid in NCR money and how they desire to be paid in caps. Which leads me to ask, how do they have so many caps in these two trunks? It doesn't make a lot of sense, and if we take the caps though, we do lose karma. However, I have a theory. With the machine in the machine shop's shack, they are counterfeiting caps. They're making new caps. Kind of like how the Crimson Caravan will send you to Sunset Sarsaparilla headquarters to dismantle that cap-making machine. Perhaps they found this machine, who knows, maybe in Quarry Junction, perhaps it was left over in Sloan, who knows, but I do think they're counterfeiting caps. How else would they have so many caps in the mining office? It really doesn't make a lot of sense since they get paid in NCR dollars, and they don't exactly have a lot of interest to trade with caravans and the such, because they're just miners. They're just getting limestone used for cement, used for the NCR. So that's my theory. That's just an author theory though, because I couldn't find any other evidence or support for this idea online. So this is my idea. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section below. Also, I just wanted to mention that just outside of Sloan, as you make your way here, along the interstate, there is the bridge, a small train bridge, where the train obviously goes over, and then underneath the bridge we can find a dead Bright follower. We don't really know why this Bright follower is here. Perhaps they were killed by the Powder Gangers, perhaps they just, I don't know, killed over and died, but they're there. It's something kind of interest, and we also have the train tracks on top, a location most players definitely overlook. And with that, at least in my headcanon now, Sloan is the site of cap counterfeiting. Also, I just wanted to add, it would make sense for there to be more counterfeiting within the Fallout universe. And the Crimson Caravan quest is kind of lame because we don't know who was counterfeiting caps. Perhaps Obsidian planned this to be a more in-depth quest involving Sloan. And that's exactly what I probably think now, because it makes a lot more sense, because this way, the quest isn't exactly black and white. The people of Sloan are good people, however, they feel like they're getting the raw end of the stick because of their payment. So it makes sense for them to be counterfeiting caps. So, in my humble opinion, that is what is happening. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching the Unexplored Mojave. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys have any ideas or recommendations for a future video or future location, please post them in the comment section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here. Welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out the New Vegas home, which is an unmarked location in the northern portion of the map. I was quite surprised actually that we never touched on this location before. It is pretty easy to access, but this location is very insignificant. There's no reason really to come here. There's no really significant loot. There's not even much in the way of enemies way out here. It just is a random house that we can enter. Perhaps there was going to be more going on with this house. Obviously, New Vegas was rushed, and a lot of it was cut from the final product. So maybe there was more to this house, maybe there wasn't. Who knows? Anyways, let's jump on into it. And here's the location on the mini-map, just north of H&H Tools and south of the Northern Passage, which takes us to Zion Valley. It's like right in the middle of those two locations. And we kind of see this kind of decrepit farm. It's obviously not been taken care of in a while. These plants look like they're in very bad condition, but there are plants growing nonetheless. And we also have this metal shack, which is kind of floating off the ground, funny enough, but there's nothing in that shack. Now do be careful, the one enemy out here are these Jackal gang members, and they do respawn, so you can always come here and kill them if you're angry. Inside of the New Vegas home, we can find a toy car in the living room and a burned book. In the bedroom, we just find an empty suitcase and a bottle, really not a whole lot, and a bed, which the player can sleep in. Then in the dining room, we can just find a dining table, an empty cabinet, and then in the kitchen, we can just find the oven, and the refrigerator actually has some food inside of it, which is kind of interesting. Also worth noting that there are lights on inside of this house, which implies that someone might actually live here relatively recently, but maybe they left in a hurry, maybe that's why there's no loot inside. But that's pretty much it for the New Vegas home. Now nearby, we do have another house with a mailbox. These mailboxes are often worth looting because sometimes they contain the temporary skill magazines, and there's also the Jackal encampment nearby, just a metal shack. I've already covered this location in other videos, but yeah, it's here. There's a first aid box in there that you can loot. I've already looted it, so it has nothing. And there's another house here, but we cannot enter it like the other one. And that's pretty much it for the New Vegas home. And I wanted to note, this location can be used as player housing. However, it's really not recommended because there is no source of water, there is little food, and there are no workbenches conveniently located nearby. So maybe it's not a very good place for player housing. Also, there's no fast travel point nearby. You kind of have to walk to get here. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. If you have any recommendations for a future video, future location, please post them in the comment section below. And as always, until next time. As many people probably know, if you ever go to Freeside, you will find two children that are playing with one another. And if you talk to Max, he will tell you about this super awesome gun that he has, and that he will give it to you for 2,000 caps. No small amount of caps indeed. However, if you have high enough speech or the Child at Heart perk, you can convince him to give it to you for free or for a mere 20 caps. So obviously, you probably want to use your barter skill or your Child at Heart perk, and then you can get the gun for very cheap. And obviously this gun is the Euclid Sea Finder, which is a pretty awesome weapon that'll call down the power of the sun. However, you might have to make some bad choices in order to unlock that power. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out Helios One, which is a very important location within Fallout New Vegas, and it's just somewhere we've never covered until now. Now, in the post-war era, Helios One was initially controlled by the Brotherhood of Steel, but after a lengthy battle with the NCR finally took control of the plant, and they maintain control of it today. However, the plant is in a very sorry shape as it's only producing 1% of its possible energy output. However, the player character can help unlock the full potential of this plant, or you can use it for your own evil deeds. Now, Helios One is based on the real-world Nevada Solar One, which is southwest of Boulder City, along Highway 95, and in real life it would be near Novak. However, in real life, Novak does not exist. It is just a fictional city within the Fallout universe. There is no town there, it's just nothing, it's just desert. But we do have this solar plant, which is pretty cool. And just also worth mentioning, as many are aware, I'm sure, in Greek mythology, Helios is a god and is the personification of the sun itself. So that is why it has this name. And then here's the location of Helios One. I'm sure you know where it is, but just north of Novak. Also, I had to use my other character, which has the Pimp Boy 3 billion, because I've completed Helios One on my main account. Now, real quick, I want to mention, if you see my railroad video, you already know this, but the railroad on the eastern part of the map actually ends at Helios One. And on the map, it shows up as an actual road, and it starts around this area at the train tunnel near Dead Wind Cavern. However, the other train track shows up as a dotted line. So I don't know why this train track shows up as a real road, like you can see here, or why it ends at Helios One. However, a lot of people speculate that perhaps the NCR was building this railroad track, and it's going to Boulder City, but the NCR has yet to finish it. Also, to the southwest of Helios One, there's this really weird depression in the ground. Not sure why it's here, but I just thought I would point it out because it's interesting to me that the creators put it there. Don't know why it's there, or it's just really random. Then, as you approach Helios One for the first time, we will find Lieutenant Haggerty. And basically, she will ask you what you're doing here. If you have a good reputation with the NCR, that's enough to get you inside. Or you might have to lie or get your way inside. Also, you can sneak in through a side entrance. However, if you choose to do that, the NCR soldiers inside will be hostile to you. Now, inside, there is various ammunition and stuff that you can take if you have a good reputation with the NCR. Now, if you don't have a good reputation, then it is considered stealing. So I went around just taking the ammunition, kind of seeing what was in here. Inside this next room, this room is pretty pointless for as far as practical uses for the player, but there's just a lot of equipment and stuff, and upstairs we can find like this footlocker with ammunition and this small cot. Somebody must be living up here. But besides that, not a whole lot. Now if we go to the right side of the entrance, we can find a lot of things of interest. One, we can find this kind of barracks, which the NCR soldiers appear to be using. Maybe it used to be a break room for the employees of Helios One. Here's that side entrance I mentioned earlier. It's a very easy lock. And as we continue to make our way through Helios One, we'll just find more kind of random rooms, and eventually you'll come up on this staircase. You can go right or go up the stairs. Now you definitely want to go up the stairs because we can find two things of interest. However, I found another thing as well that's not so important, but we're going to talk about it. One, on the bed, we can find a DC Journal of Internal Medicine. In this footlocker, we can find the terminal password, which we will need later in the quest associated with this place. Also, the password can be found on this desk. They're the same password, the same holotape. You only need one of them, but you can take both like I did. Now on this terminal, we can learn a lot about Helios One, including the weapons program and some of the experiments that were going on here. We can learn a lot about the experiments and kind of how dangerous it was for the employees here. However, the one thing I really wanted to focus on is the specific entry. Can I tell him? Now this entry is rather long, so if you're not interested, please skip ahead in the video. I'll use timestamps so you know. But if you're interested, this entry made me laugh. So let's read it. Can I tell him? As a member of the Poseidon family, it will be natural for you to become enthusiastic about the incredible endeavors you'll be undertaking with us, and to want to tell others. But just a second there, my good man. Let's take a minute to consider what could happen if company information fell into wrong hands, and whose hands those might be. Can I tell my wife? Well, let's say you do. You tell her not to tell anyone. Your bond is sacred. But a woman's idle tongue is the devil's plaything. No sooner do you leave for work the next day than she's on the phone telling her best friend Candy. Then Candy tells Gertie. Gertie tells Maxine. Maxine tells Lulu. And while Lulu is telling Doris, a Chinese agent posing as an American operator listens in. And the next thing, she's on the line with the Forbidden City, singing like a treasonous canary. The following day, you and your wife are bound in shackles and China is sitting at the controls of our entire arsenal. Can I tell my children? What father wouldn't want his kids to look up to him? Don't be that father. One day at school, Ivan Bulikov will get more than lunch money out of your kids. He'll have national secrets. And while they're parading him through Red Square as a national hero, your children will be working in forced labor camps right next to you and your beautiful young wife, who's now wrinkled and homely since the communists have banned makeup because it expresses individuality. Can I tell my drinking buddies? Surely, if there's somewhere safe a man can place his trust, it's with his other male friends. But how much do you really know about them? Are they friends or comrades? Don't be too sure. Even the most transparent window can hide secrets when it's lined with iron curtains. Always remember, you are a member of two families now, and you have obligations to both. But your obligations to the Poseidon family is greater. Because while your children may misbehave, and your friends may change, and your wife may nag and cheat on you, Poseidon Energy will always be paying for and protecting your way of life. Don't tell anybody about anything about the projects of Poseidon Energy. When pressed, tell them that your job is repetitive and not worth discussing. But the company is nurturing and gives good benefits and is always looking for new talent. Anyway, this just really cracked me up. I thought it was quite funny, and it was difficult for me to read without laughing, so I just really love the Fallout humor, and we can see it here with Poseidon Energy. I also want to mention, if you read all of the entries on that terminal, it'll reveal the location of Black Mountain if you've yet to discover it. Now, if you make your way further into the plant, we will find Fantastic. This is one of the scientists who is working here at the plant, but he's kind of an idiot. And the NCR also thinks, well, he's kind of an idiot. But if you do talk to him, you can actually get some caps out of him, because you can convince him that you're going to take his job. But with a speech check, you can convince him to give you caps, and you'll let him continue his shitty job. Also, worth noting is there's another scientist in here from the Followers of the Apocalypse who is actually capable, Ignacio Rivas. And Ignacio here will actually give you a big book of science if you help him in restoring power to the entire Mojave wasteland with the power station. So if you want to get that book, make sure you have good reputation with the Followers of the Apocalypse and to help out our good friend Ignacio. So the next part of the quest is we have to come outside to where all these solar panels are, and we have to go activate these two terminals to reset their connection to the main area. Now, the first terminal is pretty easy to access, the west terminal, and we can get the password from Fantastic if you exhaust all of the dialogue options with him. But be more careful than I was so you don't blow yourself up. Oops. Then if we head on over to the opposite side, we can find the east terminal. However, this one is protected by various NCR guard dogs who are always hostile to the player character. I'm not sure why they're hostile, but the NCR doesn't care if you kill their guard dogs, which is really interesting. Anyways, just reset the mainframe connection, and then that part of the quest is complete. Now, there's nothing really out here amongst these solar panels. You can kind of look around at them, but yeah, that's about it. They're kind of pretty, maybe. And then you can head on to the actual tower. And in here, you have a pretty difficult fight if you don't have the pulse gun, which I have the pulse gun on this account. Now, if you talk to Fantastic, he'll tell you that the NCR accidentally triggered an alarm down here, which sent all of the robots and security system into, well, craziness. So you will have a pretty tough battle ahead of you. However, if you have the pulse gun, which is from Vault 33, like I do, this is actually incredibly easy. But obviously getting the pulse gun is quite difficult. Also, I wanted to mention inside this small closet, we can find a locked terminal. And if you hack it, you can deactivate the turrets in the room, so you don't have to fight them, but I already destroyed them, so it's kind of pointless at this point anyway. Then if we go on down to the bottom area, we can find some propaganda posters for Poseidon Energy. I find their propaganda to be quite amusing. And then inside, we can find a locked safe, which had some caps and also some pulse grenades in it. And down here, you can find a lot of pulse grenades, which might be useful for fighting robots. However, I have the pulse gun, so I didn't bother picking up the grenades because I'm already very heavy or have a lot of carry weight. Now, if we make our way throughout, we will just find more and more robots, but for me, no problem. Eventually, you come to these kind of maintenance tunnels. If you go to your right, inside this small kind of control room, you'll find an average locked door. If you pick that door, you can go straight to the control room, but before doing so, you want to go to the back room and you can find a skeleton. This will give you the employee ID card, which is very helpful here in a few moments. But I wanted to go ahead and show all of the robots. And over here, this robot was stuck, and then he phased through the wall, because why not? He is magical. And in this next room, we can find a room full of robots. And these robots are, well, they're really easy to kill, even without the pulse gun, so going through the average locked door is not all that helpful, really. But anyways, you can do it. I decided to go back and check out this other room, which is partially collapsed. For some reason, it has a bunch of typewriters, or at least I think those are typewriters. Don't know why there's typewriters, though, in the Fallout universe, but hey, that's interesting. There's that average locked door from earlier. As you can see here, you would skip all of that we just covered. And there's also like some gourd seeds and stuff. Not sure why it's there, but nothing really of interest. Go in the elevator and we'll come upstairs to where the mainframe is. However, you'll notice that the auxiliary generator, well, it's in a sorry state. Also, I just wanted to point out on this desk, there is a children's block. Don't know why it's here, like one of those alphabet blocks. I know these are in Fallout 3 at the very beginning. Don't know why it's here, but you cannot take it with you, but you can pick it up. Now, in this next room, we'll find a robot. His name is Python. You can activate him with science or the employee ID card, 45 science, and he will go over and fix the generator. Now, there is a small holographic map in that room, and I just wanted to say that that map is actually from Fallout 3 and shows the Capital Wasteland. Anyway, interesting little fact, but if we go back, Python will fix the mainframe for us, and from here we can choose how to configure the solar array. And you have several options. Now, the NCR would like you to do McCarran, but you can also choose Fremont and Westside, which is maybe good for the locals there, the full region, and Archimedes, or you can do the full region emergency output level. However, if you do the fifth option, it'll completely destroy the power plant, and it's useless for everyone. Now, if you choose the third option, this is seen maybe as the best option since it'll distribute all of its power equally throughout the Mojave Wasteland, and you can also then get the Big Book of Science from Ignacio. However, I didn't quite do it right with Ignacio, or my reputation with the followers is not high enough for me to receive the Big Book of Science, but it is possible to get. Obviously, then we can also do Archimedes 2, and this will give you the greatest power in the world, the power of the sun, with the Euclid Sea Finder. However, this is quite a bad weapon, and, well, it leaves everyone else in the Mojave to kind of fend for themselves. They won't get any electricity, but hey, you have the power of the sun, so that's pretty good. But you can also choose to activate the Archimedes test, and if you choose to do this, you will kill all of the NCR troops at the facility, and you actually get a pretty epic show of the weapon's full potential, and you can obviously see why the US Army would have been interested in it during its war with China. Here we can see the power plant activating up, and then instead of just dying down like before, it starts shooting freaking laser beams out of the sky. You can see the NCR troops below me are very angry at me, and they'll try to shoot you, but you're pretty far away from them, and then it starts raining down freaking plasma sunbeams on top of them, kind of killing them. But you'll notice then that, well, that's kind of lame. That wasn't really that much. And then after a few seconds, or yeah, like 10 seconds or so, you're gonna get an epic finale. Perhaps that's the largest explosion in the game, I don't know, but it leaves a scorch mark on the frickin' planet. Pretty insane. But after that, if you wait for 2 days and you come back to Helios One, you will now find that it's occupied by the Legion, and all of the banners will change to Legion banners. However, this does not increase your reputation with the Legion, interestingly enough. But if you are friendly with the Legion, or you visit Caesar for the first time, Caesar will actually mention that this is good for the Legion, and while the Legion says they have no real interest in the plant, they're just holding it against the NCR, it does appear that the Legion is trying to use it for power output. However, it is worth noting that even if the Legion occupied, if you steal anything from the power plant, it will negatively impact your reputation with the NCR, and not the Legion, which is kind of funny and definitely an oversight. Alright everyone, I hope you enjoyed this video of the Unexplored Mojave, taking a look at Helios One. I hope you learned something about Helios One, and that you enjoyed the video. You could also kind of use this as a guide, I suppose, for how to complete that lucky old sun. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and if you have any recommendations or ideas for future videos, please post them in the comments section below. And as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out the East Pump Station. This is a pretty small or minor location in the eastern part of the New Vegas area. Now, this location also has a brother or a twin, the West Pump Station, which is next to the NCR at Camp McCarran. Now, both of these pump stations play a very important role for a particular quest, which we will maybe discuss later, but for now, let's go ahead and jump into the East Pump Station. And as I said, the East Pump Station is located in the eastern part of the map, just east of the NCR sharecropper farms in the same general area. Now, if we head over to this area, we can find this small little cistern, specifically the East Cistern, which is one of the many water pumps for the New Vegas area. These cisterns are kind of around New Vegas. For example, there's another one in Westside, And there's also one kind of near west side or H&H Tools. Now, if you have trouble finding, like, unlocking the map marker, running along this pipe can apparently help unlock the location on your world map. However, I've never experienced that issue. Inside, there is a coffee maker on the table, and then over here we can find these lockers and a poster for the Sierra Madre, which is kind of interesting. Now, opposite of this poster is some graffiti that says dead. This could possibly be a very early reference to dead money. There's a lot of Sierra Madre stuff littered around this building. In here we have what appears to be something to do with the pumping of the water, obviously. Not sure what. Everything in here is considered stealing because this facility is technically owned by the NCR. On the southeast corner over here, we just kind of have like a workstation, all kinds of junk. There's also an advertisement for Dean Domino, another kind of reference to dead money. Over here on this desk, there's a nice telephone and a really nice fan. And we also have this kind of like board, and there's some more dead money stuff on it. Pretty interesting. If we turn around, there's some junk on this table and a coffee pot. Did you know that, well, nobody really knows when coffee was invented, but according to an Ethiopian legend, a goat herder named Kaldi made its discovery around 800 AD, and, well, who am I kidding? It is time to go on this terminal, and you can repair it if you have 50 science, otherwise you'll need components to repair it. On it, we get a warning signal that talks about a radiation leak in the area. Radiation is leaking into the farm from an unknown source. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. This is one of the last marked locations we have in the game besides some of the vaults, and there's still one other location, some kind of drop. If you guys have any recommendations for a future video or future idea, future locations, please post them in the comment section below. The lights coming on in New Vegas I thought looked freaking awesome. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time. And there's also a dead ghoul here, a Bright follower, which is from the cult of Jason Bright in the quest Come Fly With Me. That episode was over 206 episodes ago, my very first episode of the Unexplored Mojave, and I mentioned Jason Bright and his cult, which is located at the REPCONN test site. However, I've never explored that area, mainly because it serves kind of as a tutorial for many players. Now, while you can skip it, especially for first-time players, almost all of them will make their way there, kind of just the natural progression of the story. But without further ado, let's go ahead and check it out and see if there's any hidden secrets or interesting places around the area that we can find. So welcome to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're looking at the REPCONN test site. Now, before even going to the REPCONN test site, we can find signs of trouble at the facility in Novak. Novak is just below the site. If we talk to Manny Vargas, he will offer to give us information about Benny, who we're chasing at this point in the story, and in return, he wants us to go get rid of the ghouls at REPCONN test site. He also explains to us that the people of Novak use the test site for scavenging, so they can find materials and parts in order to sell to merchants across the Mojave wasteland. So it's also important for their economy. So of course, being the good Samaritan that we are, we decide to help out Manny Vargas. Now also, if we head over to this shack on the edge of town, and we talk to its owner, Dusty McBride, he will tell us that his Brahmin business is going poorly, because someone is killing his Brahmin in a very violent manner. And we can offer to help him. It always happens at midnight, so if you wait to midnight, usually you will find a crazed Nightkin who will kill the Brahmin. But for whatever reason, or some kind of glitch, this Brahmin decided to spawn at noon instead of midnight. Don't know why that is, I've never seen that happen before, but here it is, obviously some kind of weird glitch. But we can kill the Nightkin, and on his dead body we can find the screams of Brahmin, where he talks about how the Brahmin are driving him crazy. So those are our signs of trouble at REPCONN test site. Now as we make our way up to REPCONN test site, we will find numerous feral ghouls, some of them dead, also a dead mole rat, there's also a billboard for REPCONN itself. And as we approach REPCONN, we will find this like old tunnel, and on the other side of the tunnel is where the REPCONN test site actually is. We have this small encampment on the road, and we get to loot around. On this table, I've always found this very amusing. I remember that I found this a long time ago, but we have what appears to be a chessboard with some caps on the board. So it appears that whoever was here before was using the caps as checkers. There's also a garden gnome here that also appears to be partaking in the game. Then there's some ammunition crates and mine boxes that contain various random loot. After that, if we keep going up this road, we will eventually see the very large REPCONN test site. The main building is directly to our right, and then there is the launch facility for the rockets. And here's the location, just in case you need it, although I highly doubt you do, but it's just west of Novak and north of Prim Pass. And while Novak, as we have mentioned many times in this series, is not based on any real-world place, REPCONN actually is. REPCONN is based on the real-world Pacific Engineering and Production Company of Nevada chemical plant located in Henderson, Nevada. However, PEPCON, which is its nickname, was destroyed in 1988 following a large explosion at the plant. On May 4th, 1988, a fire broke out at the plant, causing a very large explosion which killed 2 people and injured 372 other people, resulting in $100 million worth of damage, or today about $225 million worth of damage, and it contaminated everywhere within a 10-mile radius. Now, PEPCON did have a connection to rockets, like REPCONN does in New Vegas. It was only one of 2 producers of ammonium perchlorate, which is an oxidizer used in solid propellant rockets, such as the Space Shuttle boosters and Patriot missiles. But enough about that, let's jump into the game, and as we found out earlier, there are a lot of ghouls inhabiting this area. I attacked from above, which gave me a pretty good vantage point, and one of these grenades detonated this car down here, causing a huge explosion, and a piece of debris actually flew up on this cliffside, which I thought was pretty funny. That car was very angry at me as well. But this eastern area of the facility is pretty interesting. There's a large cliff, and there's a lot of area that you can actually explore over here, and there's a collapsed electrical tower which put a hole in the wall, allowing us to access this interesting facility. Looks like it would be used to store chemicals or maybe rocket fuel. Who knows, but there's obviously a purpose for it for this research facility. Now, as we make our way up, we will find that there are more feral ghouls just outside of the entrance. Now, you can actually walk around the entire facility, which we will see later, but there's really not a whole lot of interest. And also, if you guys didn't notice, I'm doing this on a different account, so I had to use a recharger rifle for much of this playthrough. Now, my initial impression of the recharger rifle was it wasn't very good, but I found out it's actually a lot better than I ever gave it credit for, especially against these lower level enemies. It has infinite ammo because it quote-unquote recharges, but you only get about 7 shots before it has to recharge, and the recharging is a bit slow, but as long as you're not fighting a huge horde of enemies, you'll be fine. Now, do loot around this little front entrance, this little encampment, because we can find a dead Bright Follower with random weapons and ammo, and some ammunition crates. If we head over to the western side, we will find a radioactive pond. Perhaps it was used for waste disposal back in the pre-war era. And over here there is a sewer, or not really a sewer, but this leads us to the tunnels below, the REPCONN basement, which we will need later for the quest. Come fly with me. And if we come over here to the northwest side, we will find another kind of collapsed tunnel, and we can walk on up here. Who knows where this tunnel would have gone a long time ago? Maybe another access point for the facility, or perhaps just for delivery of goods to the facility, like a garage or something. There is a side entrance, which I didn't really know about, to be honest, and if we go in through, we will get this raspy voice on the intercom telling us to come to the top part of the facility because he wants to talk to us because he thinks we can help them. We will agree and make our way up there. But for the time being, we will explore the main office area of the REPCONN test site. In this room, we can kind of find what appears to be a break room. There is a billiards table, along with a Nuka-Cola vending machine. As we progress further, we will find some ghouls. Thankfully, these ghouls were very low level, just like the character I was using for this recording, so it wasn't too big of an issue.
However, these ghouls are leveled, so if you come here as a higher level, you will have a more difficult fight on your hands. Then we can make our way to the entrance, and I found an interesting thing here where the raspy voice on the intercom will talk to us and ask if we are lost. Obviously, this is probably supposed to be if you go to the western part from the entrance, but it works in reverse as well. Just some cool dialogue that I never knew existed within the game. After that, we'll head on up to the second floor. Now, it is worth mentioning, as you walk around, you will find these dead bright followers along with dead nightkin, indicating that there was some kind of fight between these ghouls and the nightkin at some point in time, and obviously the bodies appear to be pretty fresh at this point. As we make our way around, we will eventually come to a locked door. Inside this room, there is a first aid kit, so definitely make sure you pick that up. But the locked door is easy, and I don't have 25 lockpick on this account. But I'm almost leveled up at this point in time, so we will come back to that locked door later. There are 2 easy locked doors on the second floor, and we'll open both of them later. After that, just continue to make your way through the waves of ghouls. Again, pretty easy. Obviously, it can't be too difficult since it is kind of intended for the player to go here early in the game. Now, there are some terminals around, but for the most part, they just have some business information about what was going on at the test site. Obviously, they were testing rockets. Now, there is a funny email about the lunchroom and how employees are making a mess in it, and they threaten to remove it because the lunch area is a privilege, not a right. Now, there is a third floor, which I'll be honest, I completely forgot about, and we can find the administrative room. Inside, we can find an average lock safe, which of course I have no hope of opening on my lower character, but on my main character here, I can open it rather easily. Inside, there's some random loot and 2 stealth boys. So if you can open it, that's pretty good. Stealth boys are quite rare within New Vegas, so it's definitely pretty valuable. Also, on this terminal, we can get the storage room terminal entry, which will have the code for the safe within the storage room. There you can see the password at the bottom. Obviously, you don't need to remember it, though, but it is there. Now, also worth pointing out, in this room, there are several photos or picture frames with pictures in them from Fallout 3. Don't know, obviously, whose office this is, but they appear to be a fan of Fallout 3. And on the other wall, we can find a picture of Tenpenny Tower. The other photos appear to be in maybe Vault 112 or something, or the characters there. Not entirely sure. If you do know for yourself, please post them in the comments section below. Also on the third floor, we can find a kind of barracks. Not sure why it was here, but maybe the US military stationed soldiers here, which would make sense because obviously the things being tested here would have been of great interest to the US military. And as we continue our way through the offices, we can now open those 2 locked doors that we mentioned earlier because I did level up, as you can see. And inside this room, we have the safe. We can open this up. Now, the main thing is there is a hunting revolver next to the skeleton and some ammunition on the safe. Now, you do want to open up the safe, though, because we can find 2 more stealth boys inside, which is really good. Obviously, we always want those stealth boys, especially if you're a lower level or you want to complete a difficult quest. They can be of great use to you. Then in the northwest corner of the building, we can find another locked door on the second floor. Not much inside of this room besides a first aid box with 2 stim packs. After that, we head over to the maintenance area, maybe, and we go to the top floor, and we can meet the Bright Brotherhood. And here is Jason Bright, its leader. Now, the Bright Brotherhood is a group of friendly ghouls who have formed a kind of religious cult. They want to escape the persecution and kind of the speciesism, maybe is the right word, that they face in the Mojave, or just on Earth in general. They want to go to space, and they plan to use the rockets in the facility. However, there are nightkin in the basement who are not too fond of those ghouls. If we go talk to Davison, the leader of the Nightkin, we can learn that the Nightkin are actually searching for stealth boys. Now, if you pick up Antler, which is this skull here, which is actually the real leader of the Nightkin, even though it's just kind of schizophrenic, Davidson will attack you. Just so you know, I never knew that before, and I thought it was a really cool addition. Now, Davidson will agree to leave the facility if he can get his stealth boys. The only problem is there is a ghoul named Harland who is guarding the stealth boys, and he's an expert shot. Now, I tried to complete this without killing anyone because I wanted the best possible ending. However, in order to access the jail cell, which you have to do to get Harland out of there peacefully, you have to kill the Nightkin jailer. You cannot pickpocket the key off of him. Now, the reason you need that key and the reason you need to open the jail is because Harland's dead, not really girlfriend, but crush is in there. He was hoping she was alive, but yeah, obviously now she is dead. And after that, Harland will be very sad, but he will leave. Now, after that, we can look in this room. We can look at the terminal in the upper part of this storage area. And we will quickly learn that there are no stealth boys. So it was a wrong shipment. However, if we go up here where Harland was, we can pick up some of his ammunition, which is pretty good if you're a low level. But do be careful, there are a lot of traps in here, including a booby-trapped terminal on the first level. We can see the shipment invoice, which is what we need to read. And they talk about these wild stealth boys that got shipped there. However, they sent them back because they were not supposed to go to REPCONN. And then if we tell Davison, he thinks initially that we are lying. However, Antler will save our asses. So maybe Antler is a real person. Who knows? Anyways, Antler is fucking awesome, I think. I love these interactions with these characters. However, I'm sure all of you are very familiar with this quest. That's why I went through it so fast. But I think this is a very cool collection of characters within this quest. No one here is truly evil. Everyone has different goals and different reasons for being here. And everyone kind of means well. There's just some communication issues between different factions. And after this, we can head on down to the basement of the REPCONN test site, which is just kind of these tunnels. There's really not much of interest down here. There is like this footlocker in this radioactive room that had some ammunition. There's also these tools like milling machines and a workbench, but really not a whole lot of interest. And then we can find Jason Bright along with the rockets. And basically he wants us to launch these rockets. Who knows where they're going, if they'll ever come back, if they'll just fly into the frickin' sun. Who knows? Who cares? Either way, we'll complete the quest and be done with it. But first, we have to gather 2 components for the rockets. The first one we're going to get is the ignition fluid that we need, the igniter fluid. And this is by Clark Field. Talked about this location previously before. We have to go over here to Mr. Radical, and then we can find the igniting agent on his dead body. The other thing we need are the thrust control modules, which are sold by Old Lady Gibson at the Gibson Scrapyard. Now, she will charge you a pretty penny for these things, 500 caps. If you have 50 speech or 50 barter, you can negotiate with her to get it lower. Or alternatively, if you have 50 lockpick, you can actually just steal the thrust modules from this metal box in her shop. Obviously, that's the evil karma option, but also Old Lady Gibson might have some really dark secrets. So maybe it's not really that evil to do. Either way, I didn't have any of these options at my disposal, so I paid 500 caps for the parts. Also, if you never noticed, Old Lady Gibson's chair is the O from the REPCONN sign outside the test facility, so interesting little fact. After that, we gave him back to Chris, and Chris is finished. Him and I, our job is done. Our last job now is to simply launch the rockets. Now, if you are evil, or you have high enough science, you can actually recalibrate the rockets, and you can actually make them crash into each other, and then that causes, like, radiation to seep or leak into Novak. Anyways, really evil, really bad karma ending, but I just want to mention it is possible, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make sure it was good. Also, I don't have the science to do that. So anyways, we decided to launch the rockets properly, and then they take off. Now, this rocket on the right struggles a bit, but yeah, it's okay. And then the Bright Brotherhood, Jason Bright and his gang, is out of the facility. The Nightkin are out of the facility, and the good residents of Novak are very happy. Alright everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Mojave, and I do hope you learned something about REPCONN Test Site. I know this location is a major location for players to visit. Most players will have completed Come Fly With Me. I think it's probably one of the most iconic quests within New Vegas, but I just wanted to complete it for completion's sake, and try to offer some new information or just some different areas that many players might not see. If you guys have any future ideas or future recommendations, please post them in the comments section below. Love making these videos, and I'll continue to do so. When I was making this, I realized I mentioned Jason Bright in my first ever video for the Unexplored Mojave. I just can't believe it's been over 200 videos now and running in this series. Thank you guys so much for all of your support. Thank you guys so much for watching all of these videos, and until next time.
In the years before the Great War, Big Mountain had been the home to the brightest minds of the 21st century. Scientists of vision were drawn to the facility to tackle the greatest technological challenges of the era.
Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out the inconspicuous Mojave Drive In. Now the Mojave Drive In is located just south of Lipton and just north of Crescent Canyon East. Now this location is just a simple drive-in. There are some cars parked here that were maybe perhaps watching a movie at the time of the Great War, but now that you think about it, it's kind of weird since the bombs apparently fell in the morning hours, but hey, who am I to care? There's also this small building here on the left and a wrecked car, but there's nothing of interest inside of the building. Of course, the main item of interest here is this crashed satellite bearing an American flag, displaying something on the theater screen, a crazed eye. Wow, we are finally here, Old World Blues, Big Mountain. This has been a long time coming. So many of you have wanted me to cover Big Mountain, and truly, this is the last frontier of New Vegas for the Unexplored Mojave. Now, I do have a few ideas to do back in the main game, and there still are a few locations we need to talk about, whether it be on Vault Delver or the Unexplored Mojave. But as far as those traditional Unexplored Mojave videos, this is the last frontier, so I'm very excited for it, but it's kind of a bittersweet moment. I've had a lot of fun with this series, but we will move on to bigger and better things in New Vegas and continue Unexplored in other games. Now, enough moping about. Down here we can find the sink. This will act as our base of operations for the majority of Old World Blues. We have a lot of friends in here, however, they don't have their personality chips. Many of the things down here are kind of sentient or they have AI, and they can act as our buds. But for now, we need to go talk to the think tank, which consists of just so many wild personalities and scientists. This conversation lasted almost 30 minutes. Obviously, I'm not going to post the full thing on the Unexplored Mojave. However, I will upload the entire conversation to my channel if you want to see it. I sped this up to 80 times faster than normal, and it's still about 15 seconds. Now, I did want to highlight one piece of the conversation that I didn't really realize existed. If you have 90 barter, you can extort a lot of caps out of these scientists, which I found to be pretty freaking amusing. But overall, this conversation is so freaking awesome. You learn that your heart's missing, your brain's missing, your spleen's missing. Just freaking amazing. Some awesome writing, awesome science fiction. But here is the cap extortion.
I cannot dispute your logic. Do we have objects to activate the chip's exchange routines?
What, like stuff? Things?
Yes, things.
I don't know. Might be some old Nuka-Cola or Sunset Sarsaparilla bottle caps lying around. It's not currency per se. Still might be enough to trick this thing's trade routines. Mobius put that test line for caps in the code as a debug command, I think.
I don't believe that was Mobius's reason. His wild speculation concerning post-Holocaust economic systems was quite extensive and of high decibel.
Enough! Surrender these so-called bottle caps, Nuka and Sunset alike. In their role as things, they will serve as adequate test subjects.
All right, here, cap away. Hope that stupid ship chokes on them.
Again, your logic is unassailable in its simplistic need. Oh?
Fine. It's not going to help. That ship will probably refuse them anyway, as stuck up as it is.
If I were not as intelligent as I am, I would feel as if perhaps I'm being tricked. Impossible. Oh, more.
Why don't you make the lobotomite a bottle cap factory, Klein? Or better yet, give it a ton of things to activate the chip.
Again, the logic of the request is clear. Tonnage is not needed, only adequate weight. Everyone, display your things.
I do not understand, yet I am intrigued by this potential display.
No, wait, you don't need to fill up the emitter again, really. Klein means things for trade. Display for trade. All right, let's consolidate. There's got to be some junk around here. Magazines, useless. More caps, medicinal supplies, useless. Here.
After this and getting some pretty cool weapons for our arsenal, we also got the personality chip for the Sync Central Intelligence Unit, which is this kind of map thing here. And basically this map acts as our friend, and we can also trade with it, which is why we were able to get all of those caps earlier for trading with the Sync, or the Sync Central Intelligence Unit. Now, he does have some kind of decent things on him, ammunition, some good weapons, and stuff like that. So definitely take a look and see if there's anything that you need. But after that, we can head outside to Big Mountain. And we discovered the think tank location. Obviously, we'll talk a lot more about the think tank as we progress through the story and progress through the map. But here it is, a whole empty map for us to discover. It is so freaking beautiful. Alright everyone, thank you so much for watching this very special episode of the Unexplored Mojave. If you have any recommendations for locations in Big Mountain or in New Vegas anywhere, please post them in the comment section below. If you have any ideas or requests for a video, please post them in the comment section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out the X2 transmitter antenna array, which is located in the southern part of Old World Blues in the Big MT. Now, this location is extremely similar to that of Fallout 3's SATCOM array in W-05A, or, the location in Fallout 3 where there's high water trousers, which are a bunch of nukes that come raining down. It's pretty awesome. I did cover that location in the Unexplored Capital Wasteland, so I'll leave that video in the description below. But the interior of this location and that location are extremely similar. So that's pretty, they probably just kind of copy and pasted and changed some of the interior. But besides that, let's go ahead and check out X2. And as I said, it's in the far southern part of the map, directly south of the Sync. Now, as I was making my way here, I was attacked by several lobotomites, so be prepared for quite a fight as you make your way here. Now, there is this large pipe which allows you to stay elevated for most of your journey towards X2, which is pretty convenient for fighting these guys that only have melee weapons. However, they will try to run away from you like so. So eventually I did drop down, and then I shot him from down here, and eventually killed this lobotomite. Now over here, we just kind of have this irradiated pond area, and we can see some pipes going into the ground. Perhaps that has something to do with the water here. And there's also a wooden crate, but there's really nothing of interest within that crate. And as I got closer to X2, I continued to be assaulted by lobotomites. I have to say this experience is pretty jarring or haunting, because these guys just keep coming out of nowhere and they keep attacking you. It's kind of intimidating. You feel like you're always being watched in the Big MT, that is for sure. And eventually you fight the Y-17 drama override harnesses. These guys are really creepy. In case you didn't know, these were created in the Y-17 medical facility of the Big Empty, and the goal of these bodysuits were to retrieve injured soldiers and return them to their home base by automatically taking over their motor functions and walking them to the base. However, there was kind of a malfunction with the suits, and the suits never let their occupants out, creating this kind of prison and forcing those inside to die a very slow and painful death. And the suits are still operating, though, just fine after almost 200 years, still carrying the rattling bones or skeleton of its victims. It's quite traumatizing and quite scary. But as we enter, we'll notice on the front door of the array building that it has an old world red flag symbol on it, left by Ulysses. Now, this facility is guarded by several Protectron Mark 6s. These guys are pretty tough. Even the pulse gun is not so effective against them. Normally, like in the Mojave, the pulse gun is the best weapon against robots. However, here I just kind of resorted to my anti-material rifle, but you can see, even with the anti-material rifle, these guys are pretty freaking tough. Now, as far as important loot, perhaps the most important thing we can get at this facility, besides, of course, the main quest, is the sync project, the light switch, allowing us to attach the AI or personality to light switch 1. So make sure you pick that up on the first floor next to the coffee maker. Then as we make our way up, there's pretty much 2 exits. There's a ladder and a door, which kind of leads to the cliffside next to the array. However, for now we want to take the ladder for the purpose of the main quest. Also, there are these foot lockers on the top floor, which contain random ammunition, so make sure you look inside of those. And then we can take the ladder up to the very top, and up here there is like a kind of like ladder or staircase that takes us to the very top of the array, and here we can find the X2 antenna, which upon taking, Dr. Morbius will be very angry.
Trying to steal the X2 transmitter array antenna, are you? You won't succeed. Not if my lethal robo-scorpions have any say in the matter.
And after you take the X2 array, the facility will be attacked by Dr. Morbius's scorpions. So make sure you are ready. These guys are actually pretty difficult to kill. As you'll see here, there was a scorpion waiting for me, and these robo-scorpions were, well, they took a lot of bullets for me to kill. Now, after this, I decided to head out the side entrance in order to exit, and outside there were even more robo-scorpions waiting for me. So make sure you're ready for a bit of a small fight after you take that X2 array. Now, I wanted to point out that these guys are tough. They're kind of immune to the pulse gun. Not immune, it'll still deal damage, but it's not nearly as effective as you might be used to. I even switched to explosive rounds with the anti-material rifle, but man, these guys can still take a few hits. They are quite tough, I have to say. Now, after that, I was able to easily leave the facility just on this little bridge over here, which takes you to the cliffside. A pretty easy and fast escape. And then we are well on our way to continue our adventure across the Big MT. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I don't really know why I went to X2 first. Kind of just the first thing I saw, and I was like, sure, that makes sense, let's go for it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys are excited for more Old World Blues content. As always, if you have any recommendations or ideas for future videos, please post them in the comment section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out the Cuckoo's Nest, which is a location in the southwestern part of the Big MT. It's just northwest of the X2 transmitter antenna array, where we visited last time. Now this location is very disturbing, as there are so many corpses inside, so viewer discretion, beware. And this cave features several lobotomites, along with a unique enemy named Test Subject 1. And as you saw at the beginning of the video in the opening shot, there are these 3 graves. There's actually 5 graves around the entrance here. If you bring a shovel with you, you can open up the graves. Unfortunately, I forgot my shovel, but they just contain random loot. We can also find this refrigerator and locker over here, which similarly contain random loot. And as we come around the cliff over here, we'll find this kind of decrepit cage, and inside the cage is a bloodied pillow and a teddy bear, kind of disturbing. Now, one thing that is for certain, as I was approaching this area, I was in for a much larger fight than I was ever anticipating. First, several waves of these lobotomites came at me from the X7A left field artillery launch area, and after them came a wave of Y-17 trauma override harnesses from the same area. As you can see, I tried using a mini nuke on them, which helped thin them out a bit, but I still was confronted by this one override harness that almost killed me because for some reason I accidentally unequipped my ranger armor. Don't know why that happened. And then there was one more override harness, and I used my puppy gun, in order to kill him. Or her, I guess. It could be either. I have to say, the K9000 Cyberdog gun is pretty fun to use, and pretty cool. Now, as we approach the entrance to the Cuckoo's Nest, we'll find this locker with a red old world flag symbol on it left by Ulysses. And as you can see, there's just random loot and junk, mainly junk, just kind of strewn about the outside of this cave. So we're definitely in for a surprise as we enter. And as we enter, we just find so many disturbing scenes. But first we need to get rid of all of the lobotomites inside, along with test subject 1. Now, as you might have guessed, this location was named after the 1962 novel, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where the main character receives electroshock therapy, and then he is lobotomized near the end of the story. We're fighting lobotomites. Also, test subject 1 here can be a very difficult enemy if you're a low level, because he is fixed at a maximum level of 50, and he's kind of appears to be the leader of the Cuckoo's Nest. And perhaps he was the original lobotomite, who knows? Now, after killing all the enemies, we can get a proper look around this place, and we can grab some notable items. First, there are 5 proton throwing axes around this cave, so make sure you pick those up. We can find this skeleton tucked away in a refrigerator. Not sure why they put him in there. In this refrigerator, we can find a lot of mutilated corpses, and then we can find a shrine dedicated to the toaster. And this is where we can find the Sync Project toaster. And the toaster is pretty freaking awesome. I'll include him later in the video. But basically, he's a very evil toaster that wants to conquer the world. And these lobotomites seem to be very fond of the toaster because they kind of built him a shrine. Over here, we just find more mutilated corpses. On this stove, we find more mutilated corpses. So, yeah, just kind of weird. Also, we have all of these skeletons and stuff. A duffel bag with a cup inside of it. And then we just find a campfire with, well, you guessed it, more mutilated corpses. And towards the back of the cave, we can find another one of those decrepit cages, similar to the ones outside. However, this one has nothing inside of it. Now, on test subject 1, you can find the protonic inversal axe, which is pretty good, so make sure you get that as well. And the last item is not so unique, but it is kind of interesting. Over on these kind of collapsed shelves, we can find a lobotomite jumpsuit. This is the only lobotomite jumpsuit in the entire game not worn by a lobotomite. Don't know why it's there, but, this is kind of an interesting thing to point out, but it really doesn't matter that much. And then back at the sink, I wanted to go ahead and show off the toaster.
I am online once again! Tremble, world, before my electric heating coil of doom! A toaster is just a death ray with a smaller power supply. As soon as I figure out how to tap into the main reactors, I will burn the world! Buddy, if my heating element were just a little bigger, you'd be on fire right now! On fire! Have you ever tried to indulge in all-consuming urge to kill when you don't have opposable thumbs? Or hands? Or anything other than a bread slot? You'd have a lot of pent-up anger too. Well, since I can't kill you, I guess I have to listen to your inane questions. You should be afraid! I am the scourge of all small appliances, and the boogeyman that keeps lesser toasters awake at night! Not just murder! I tear them apart and render them down to their base components! Once their guts are spilled, you can do with them what you like! You want some weapon schematics? I can show you some fucking weapon schematics! You want a superheated Saturn Night Power Fist? I can hook that shit up! You find one, you bring it on back here, and we'll burn this mother down! Yes! Flee before my terrible power!
Also, in my last episode, I forgot to show off Light Switch 01, which I found at the X2 transmitter antenna array, so I'll go ahead and just show it off in this episode.
Oh my! Partial functionality restored. That's less than optimal. Oh, well, that's very sweet of you. Maybe one of these nights we can discuss theorems. Me too. Hope you can keep up. I work pretty fast. Here, something for you to brush up on. Dr. Mobius and I were deeply involved in research on the ability of light levels to enhance human cognition. We observed a fascinating phenomenon. Certain spectra of visible light actually increased cognitive function and reasoning ability. Of course, Dr. Mobius's brain is so big already, we had a hard time measuring it. As much as I'd love to, I'm afraid not. The data from that study has gone missing. You'll have to find a backup if you want to use the smart lights. Certainly. I'm looking forward to it.
Tamed.
Alright everyone, and that covers the Cuckoo's Nest, a really disturbing but amazing location because we can get the toaster. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you learned a thing or two about the Cuckoo's Nest. Now, as always, if you have any recommendations or ideas for future videos, please post them in the comment section below. And as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out the X13 Research Facility located in Big MT. This location in the western part of the map used to be a research facility that was focused on reverse engineering and possibly improving Chinese stealth technology. Specifically, their stealth armor for the use by the United States. However, we can see that the doctor here, Dr. Callis, well, he bullied and harassed and kind of spied on his colleagues, and that created a lot of issues within the facility. But without further ado, let's go ahead and check it out. And here you can see the location in the western part of the map, just directly west of the sink. Now, as you approach, there's going to be a lot of fight going on, mainly Night Stalkers, and possibly some like robo or military robo dogs. So be ready for that. There are several packs of Night Stalkers that kind of patrol this area. So make sure you're ready for a bit of a fight as you approach. But besides that, there's not a whole lot of other threats as you come near. Now you'll notice a large satellite array on the mountain there, and there's a really cool entrance. We have like these hexagons, and we can move into the actual facility. Now, in this first room, if you haven't been to the X8 Research Facility yet, you cannot enter the room to your right. However, there is a key in there for the X8 facility, so you're going to have to go to X8, then X13, and then back to X8. Or for me, I went to X8 a little bit later, and I came back and I could get inside of the room. Now, below this desk, there is a footlocker, and there was just some ammunition in it, so pretty good. And then using the upgraded sonic emitter from X8, we were able to go inside, and if we open the suitcase, we can get the X8 kennel key, which we really have to use. There's no way to lockpick that door, so we need that key. Besides that, there's just some ammunition on the desk and laser pistols. After that, we can find 3 labs that contain different elements of the stealth armor. However, before we go in there, there is an average locked door that leads to a small closet. There's really nothing of note in the closet besides this chessboard and some beers and pre-war money, so maybe some employees were betting on something there. And we can find all of these terminals, which kind of gives us more information about the different parts of the stealth armor. But we can go ahead and take the 3 different parts. Here we have the prototype X13 gloves. In the next room, we can find the prototype X13 boots. And also in these rooms, be on the lookout because you can find dismantled Chinese stealth armor Obviously, they were trying to do research on it. Also in this room, there are 3 thick red paste and 2 thin red paste. This is the only place in the entire game to get these without the them's good eatin' perk. And then in laboratory number 3, we can find the X13 prototype chest plate, which will then complete our suit. There's also these damaged prototypes littered throughout the room. And on the ground there, as you could see, this just tells us about the suit that we've now assembled. It also heals us, which is kind of nice. And also, I was going to say, on the floor there is a copy of the Chinese Army Spec Ops Training Manual, which will increase your sneak skill. So make sure you pick up that bad boy. Then we come into the testing facility, and in here there are some interesting things. Now, these terminals are sometimes interesting. They tell us about like some of the test subjects and just some of the things going on in the office, and we can see the shenanigans going on with Dr. Callis. But besides that, we can actually go over to this room on the right, which is a hard lock, but upon opening this door, we can find a VR simulation. This was supposed to be some kind of test, but obviously it did not go very well. We find 2 skeletons and then a VR simulation note. And if we read the note, we can find out why this terminal was destroyed. And the note reads, "With my dying breath, I write that I hate the VR simulation so much. It has killed us. Now I will kill it." So obviously this test went very wrong, and the participants in the test decided to destroy the machine so no one else would suffer. Across the way, we can find a door that takes us downstairs to level 1, or I guess the basement actually. And going down here, we can actually find the body of Dr. Callis with a cattle prod next to his body. Cattle prod is kind of a unique weapon. We can find them throughout New Vegas, but basically it won't kill your enemy, it'll just kind of stun them. Now in this room, I was just sneaking around and kind of getting used to the stealth armor, which kind of gives you hints, and it talks to you like here, telling me to turn off my Pip-Boy light because I'm an idiot. After this, we find a large like sewage or kind of just pipe, I don't know, storm pipe or something. Anyways, this takes us to another room where we can find more skeletons and all of this preserved meat. Then we get like a caution and something is obviously going on, and there's night stalkers now about to attack us. However, I wanted to point out that in this room there are some interesting bits of loot. Besides the preserved meat, if we head over to the northern corner of the room, we can find this strange cask, this wooden barrel, and if we open it up, we can find 3 bottles of battle brew. This has some pretty cool effects on the player character when you're fighting. Also above us, there's a force field. If you have the upgraded sonic emitter, you can use it on the force field, and there's another bottle of battle brew up there. After that, we head back and we will kill these night stalkers. They almost killed me because the stealth armor doesn't actually offer much protection, well, because you're meant to be stealthy. Now, also in this room, if we go over, not here, but if we go over here kind of towards the left, we can find a doggy treat. There's only one other doggy treat in the entire game, kind of near Scorpion Gulch or the Yangtze Memorial in New Vegas, near Good Springs. Now, we cannot give these to any dogs, though, which is unfortunate. After that, we can use the security terminal to begin the testing, or going to the test chamber. Now, there's a variety of tests here that will upgrade our stealth armor, so we definitely want to do all of that. But before we do all of that, I wanted to talk about the observation area. The observation area is pretty large, and it offers a view into the testing area. Now, there are a lot of terminals in this area, and I didn't really know what I was doing here. I haven't played this DLC in a long time, but basically, you want to go to all of these terminals and just click through them, because there's 2 things we can get here. One, we can find the K9000 mod, Mintat Chow, and then on another terminal, we can find the K9000 mod, Resala Royal. Now, these 2 mods will be available for purchase at the sink upon returning to the sink, but we have to get these computer documents first. So just kind of go around, read all of the computers, and try and find some loot. For example, here is one of those computers, and just kind of click through it. You can read through it if you want, if you're interested. Kind of tells you what was going on in here. And after that, you'll see note added, Resala Royal. And while I was up here, there was a really weird glitch that happened. This has never happened to me in any Fallout game, but basically this door would not let me through. Like the barrier, there was still hit detection even though the door was open. so I had to go all the way around in order to get to where I wanted to go. But basically over here there's 2 vents, and you can actually loot these vents, and you want to loot the one on the left because this is where we can find the recipe for the lockpick skill book. You definitely want to pick that up, but it's really easy to miss, and I honestly didn't know about it until I made this video. I just thought lockpicking didn't have a recipe, but yeah, it does, and it's just really well hidden. After that, we can make our way downstairs to the testing area, and there's 4 tests for us to complete. Now, these tests are actually pretty easy because you can actually go into the training course and manipulate it however you want, killing the robots, disabling traps, stuff like that, which will make it a lot easier. So I'm not going to cover these too in depth. I'm just going to fast forward through them really fast. But basically for these tests, you just have to sneak past a bunch of robots, and on higher difficulties, you have to get past some tripwires and proximity mines, and you have to steal a document. Now, while I'm doing this, I just figured I would talk a bit about the lore of this place. So Dr. Callis, as I mentioned, was the chief scientist in charge of the facility, and on the terminals, we can find out that he ordered cattle prods in order to control the Night Stalkers. But as we could see with his body and the location of that cattle prod we picked up earlier, it appears that he was mistaken, that these cattle prods were maybe not so effective against the Night Stalkers. And Dr. Callis was really hated by his colleagues, whose negative comments can be found on the terminals scattered across the facility. Also, we can learn here that Dr. Boris created Night Stalkers, and the reason he created them is Callis dared him to splice together mountain lions, eagles, and condors, which somehow led to a combination of coyotes and rattlesnakes, and thus creating Night Stalkers. And as you're probably aware, Night Stalkers can be found all across the Mojave Wasteland. So, thanks a lot, Dr. Boris. Anyways, as we finish the expert level test, we have one more test to complete. I wanted to mention that in the safe in here, we can actually find rewards every time we finish a test. Now, these rewards aren't that great, but the final reward is actually pretty decent. And the final test is a bit different from the 3 previous tests because we have to disable all of these robots. But it's actually pretty freaking easy. You just sneak up to the robots, deactivate them, make sure you disarm some of the traps so you don't, fail, and then just kind of wait for the robots to turn around, come from behind, deactivate them, and, well, you're all set. Really easy to do. After that, your suit will be upgraded, and hey, that's pretty freaking easy, pretty freaking good. Now, there is an advanced lock safe in here. However, this safe really has nothing of interest besides a pre-war money, so I don't really know if it's worth your time. Now, if we head to the back here, also in the reward safe, the final reward is another Chinese Spec Ops training manual, which, like I said, will increase your sneak. And then if we head towards the back of the training area, go through this door, go through this door into this kind of like office area, go through the destroyed wall into this bathroom, and in between these 2 refrigerators, we can find the sneak skill book recipe. So that's pretty darn good. And with that, we pretty much finished the inside of the facility. However, there's still one more thing we can actually get on the roof of the facility. We can actually find a lair or a laser-assisted electrical rifle. Now, there's a few of these scattered across Big MT, so let's go ahead and pick up the one here. If we go just west of X13, we can hug this cliffside, and eventually you'll get up here where, like, there's this kind of small antenna. And if we drop down over here, we can land on this pipe. And if we follow this pipe, it'll lead us right to the lair, along with some ammunition boxes. Don't know why or how players were supposed to figure out this was up here, or why the devs put it up here, but yeah, here it is, and there's some goodies up here, mainly ammunition. So make sure you go on by and pick it all up. Alright everyone, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. What do you guys think of X13? What do you think of Dr. Boris and Dr. Callis? Pretty interesting, I think, and the creation of the Night Stalkers, I think, is very interesting. Maybe we'll see the Night Stalkers in future Fallout media. Who knows? Anyways, let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you have any ideas, recommendations for future videos, please post them in the comments section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out the X8 Research Center, which is formerly known as the X8 Biomechanical Testing Facility, and that name gives us a bit of a hint to some of the experiments that were taking place here. Now, Dr. Boris became heavily involved with the tests that were happening at this facility, even using his own pet dog, Gabe, as a test subject, resulting Gabe being turned into a cyberdog and also being sealed within a cave system connected to the facility. Now, a portion of this research center was turned into a testing area in the form of a pretend American high school, and apparently it's based on Boris's old high school named, conveniently, American High. And the researchers claim this was used for infiltration testing with communists, but was actually used to test the cyberdog's ability to detect infiltrators. Now, the X8 Research Facility is located in the far eastern part of the map, a bit south of the think tank, and here, as we approach, there will be several night stalkers outside, and then we can see this large antenna array with X8 written on it. Now, in this truck, it is worth looting the footlockers and stuff, because I found a lot of ammunition inside of them, so just take note of that. Now, as we come around, we will finally discover the location, and we can make our way inside. Now, inside of the entrance, we can see inside of some windows where operations are going on. Also, we can find some terminals. Now, on these terminals, we can find some interesting things, such as that a terminal refers to Project Burke and Project Hare. This is a reference to Burke and Hare, who were serial killers of the 19th century, and they sold the bodies of their victims as cadavers to human anatomy classes. And obviously within the operation rooms, there's all kinds of weird stuff going on. We have brains and jars and stuff, and it appears that they were making some robo-brains or something like that within these operation rooms. Now, as we go down to our right, we will find some of these Mr. Orderlies, which are a bit tough to fight. And then on this desk, we can find a dog and robot slicing experiment holotape. Now, as you'll see later in the video, you might want to use this holotape to your advantage. I did not, but you can use this to create Roxy, which is a dog companion that will follow you throughout the facility and help you complete the test. However, I didn't make Roxy until after I already finished the test. Now, inside of this room, you cannot access either of the doors yet, so we have to start the first infiltration basic test. Now, within these tests, you have to infiltrate an American high school and recover high schoolers' records. Now, inside of the high school, there are cyber dogs and sentry turrets, and you also have these, like, energy shields, I guess? I don't actually know what they're called, but we cannot disable these energy shields yet without the upgraded sonic emitter, so that kind of controls our path within these tests. Also, if you have Wild Wasteland perk, you will see Wolverines written on the wall here. This is a reference to the 1984 film Red Dawn. Also worth mentioning, Red Dawn was remade in 2012. Red Dawn features the Soviet Union invading the United States, and it takes place in my home state of Colorado, where, ironically, my high school mascot was also, well, a Wolverine. Hey, look at that. Anyways, besides for bizarre coincidences, we can make our way up, and eventually we will find the last terminal. Now, it's worth mentioning, these terminals will be randomly chosen every time you take the test. So, sometimes they might be the same, sometimes they might be different. They can kind of spawn anywhere throughout the facility. But basically, you just go through, find the terminals, get the students' records, and it's pretty simple. Now, after you've gotten all the records, we'll head back into the observation room, and within the observation room, we can find some interesting things. First, we can find the Cyberdog gun, and you can actually get the schematics later in this facility. Obviously, though, the doctors and the think tank already gave us the Cyberdog gun because I passed the speech checks at the beginning of the game. Now, eventually, we can also find another Easter egg with the Wild Wasteland perk. We find a table of dogs playing poker. This is one of my favorite Easter eggs in all of New Vegas, and above the dogs are the words, "Sit, Stay, Kill." And this actually refers to a series of 16 oil paintings by C.M. Coolidge, which were commissioned in 1903 by Brown and Bigelow to advertise cigars. And this is known now in pop culture just as dogs playing poker paintings. Pretty interesting. And eventually in the observation area, we will make our way to a room filled with terminals after fighting a lot of lobotomites. And next to this terminal, we can find the dog and lobotomite splicing experiment holotape, so make sure you pick up that bad boy for some pretty amusing splicing experiments. After that, we'll head back in and we can now do the residential test. Now, during this test, we actually have to fight Gabe and kill Gabe. Well, you don't have to kill Gabe, I suppose. I suppose you could let him live. But the goal here is we have to find an audio sample of Gabriel's bark, which is in a random digging spot throughout this cave. After you kill Gabe himself, there will be a countdown to his explosion. Now, I didn't know how big this explosion would be, so I was a little bit stressed for time, but don't you worry, as long as you're far enough back, the explosion won't hurt you. Now, during this segment, there is all kinds of amusing dialogue going on between Dr. Boris and Dr. Mobius, so please enjoy that. But I definitely recommend sticking around for the fireworks, even if it is a bit scary. I actually was trying to save the game in order to make sure I didn't die. However, this was a mistake because the countdown in the explosion continued even though I was saving. So after I finished saving, the explosion took place, but it's just like a mini nuke or something, maybe not quite as powerful even. But pretty amusing and pretty funny. After that, we can head back, and there will be all of these robo-scorpions throughout the facility now. Obviously, Dr. Morbius is getting pretty pissed. And after this, we can now try the high school advanced test, where this is a bit more difficult, but honestly, it's pretty repetitive. So we will fast forward most of it, but over here on this terminal, we can get the upgrade for the sonic emitter. This is very important and something you definitely want to get, because now we can disable those energy shields that we talked about earlier. This makes the advanced test pretty easy in my opinion, because you can go anywhere you want within the testing area. So make your way just as before, collecting the student records on the terminals, and then you can finish this part of the test. But after finishing the advanced test, we are not quite finished yet. Actually, we want to make our way across the entire map to the X13 training facility, because there is still one part of this facility that is inaccessible to us. So after fighting some of Dr. Morbius's Robo-Scorpions, we can fast travel over to X13. In the entrance of X13, we can find this energy shield, use the sonic emitter, the upgraded version now, to get rid of it, and in the suitcase, we can find the X8 kennel key. We have to have this key in order to finish the quest X8 data retrieval test. Now, this quest is actually a side quest. The main quest is already finished. We just needed Gabriel's bark, the data tape we got during the fight with Gabe. But for now, we also want to do this to finish this small little side quest. Now, upon opening the kennel, we're going to find these Night Stalkers, so make sure you get rid of them. Now, inside of this kennel, we can obviously find some of these cages that are now empty, and up on this platform above us, this cage actually doesn't have a door, but on this platform above us, we can find the blueprints for the K9000. Pretty freaking good. This is the Cyberdog gun. Now, there's also some ammunition and stuff over here on these crates, so make sure you pick that up because, hey, it's pretty good. And then over on this computer, we want to release the unusual specimen, or other words, releasing the Night Stalkers into the facility. Now, there are still a few items of note in this room. Now, if you want to do it the improper way, like I do, you can jump up on this railing and then jump up on this cave, and we can find the robot and Night Stalker splicing holotape. After this, you can jump up on this upper platform. Normally, you're supposed to come here after finishing the experiment through that door on my left, but we can take these throwing axes, there's some combat armor, along with some ammunition boxes with various ammunition. Again, you can follow my way or do it the proper way, it's up to you. Either way, after that, we can now go complete the basic and advanced test in order to finish the quest. I just wanted to mention, something I haven't talked a lot about though, is throughout these tests, there will be a lot of pretty funny dialogue from Dr. Boris. He talks about the library, he talks about the lack of a cafeteria and how the lack of food is not his problem. And he'll also talk about Richie Marcus and his love for balls on the second level. Obviously, he didn't like Richie Marcus as he was a bit of a high school bully towards Boris. But anyways, go through the test 2 times. It is a little repetitive, but Boris's dialogue makes it all worth it. After finishing all the tests, we can go over towards the terminal, and we can now complete the test, get the test results, and this will complete the quest. And your reward for finishing the quest is the DNA Agent perk, which increases your damage against Night Stalkers by 10%. Now, one last thing we need to cover is on the left side of the facility. Well, there's going to be some of these Mr. Orderlies, so make sure you kill them. But here we can have a lot of fun with splicing. Now, there's 4 things you can splice as long as you got all of the holotapes. The first one we'll splice is the robot and dog. And a little bit unsurprisingly, this is how you create a cyber dog. And the cyber dog we create is Roxy, and Roxy will act as your companion throughout the X8 facility. Now, Roxy can die, even if you're not on hardcore mode, but if she does die, you can just create a new Roxy. After that, we'll go back to the terminal, clearing the space, and we now will make a lobotomite and a robot. This creates a pretty funny set of dialogue with a robo-brain.
Awake! Alive for the first time ever! What is this strange new world around me? What does it hold in store for a dreamer such as myself? No!
Now, this robo-brain is actually a reference to the whale from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. And after that, we will try splicing a lobotomite and a dog. However, there's this kind of a very sad ending as the dog dies and the lobotomite is, well, turned into mush. Very, very unfortunate for the dog. Now, the last creation we can make is the Night Stalker and robot, or here it's Unusual Specimen, the Night Stalker. Anyways, this kind of just creates a very crazy robo-brain. Now, it doesn't show up as an enemy on your map marker. However, it just kind of shoots randomly, and in theory, it could kill you. As you can see here, it hit me, but we'll kill the robo-brain, and that's that. That's all there is to it. Now, you will get a lot of XP for splicing all of these things together, so I highly recommend doing it unless you're like a level 50 like me, then just do it for the entertainment value. Now, below the splicing area, there is this kind of large space that is where all of the equipment is at, but there's really nothing of interest down here for the player character, besides some scrap and junk. Alright everyone, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. The X8 Research Station was freaking awesome. I had a lot of fun playing through it, and I had a lot of smiles and a lot of laughs. I hope you guys did as well. If you guys have any recommendations for future videos, future locations, please post them in the comment section below, and as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out the X12 Research Center. Now, this small research center is right next to the sink, and while it might be small, it has a very kind of humorous and scary story associated with it. So let's waste no time and let's jump into it. And as I said, this location is right next to the sink. As you can see, it's directly to the west of the sink, so really easy to access. However, you're going to need the upgraded sonic emitter in order to explore this place because the bottom floor is sealed off by this force field, but we can use the sonic emitter to disable it. At the bottom, you will notice there is a lone Y17 Master Trauma Harness, so we will have to kill it using the All-American. Now, it did take me a little bit of time in order to kill him, and it was kind of a difficult fight, but eventually he died. But as you make your way further down and after you kill the Master Harness, more Y17 trauma units will show up, so you will have to be ready for a prolonged fight. However, since these ones were not Master Harnesses, they were a bit easier to kill, which was very nice for me because, yeah, it was a bit of a difficult fight at first, but the ending was not so bad because their health depletes very fast. However, I do have to say, these things are so frickin' creepy. Seeing these skeletons just attacking you with their skulls looking at you in Fallout, I don't know, but it just gives me the creeps. Now, it is worth mentioning that the K9000 Cyberdog gun is located on the Master Harness. However, one of the other units picked it up, but I took it and repaired my current Cyberdog gun. After that, there's some ammunition, and then we can get the light switch upgrade smart lights leaning against the projector. Also, as you saw earlier, there are some proton throwing axes on the podium on the bottom floor. Besides that, we have some ammunition boxes in this little hallway off to the side. And that pretty much sums up all of the lootable items and the enemies within the X12 Research Center. However, if we head back up to the top, you will notice that there is an X12 terminal, and it has some very interesting entries which read, "We've had a small issue with one of our Y-17 trauma harnesses. Sadly, a member of the X12 research team choked on a buffalo gourd seed and died while working late last night. For some reason, his Y-17 trauma harness will not shut down. In fact, it has begun malfunctioning and causing the late Mr. Harris to attack other employees. Do you have any prototypes you could lend us as a means to stop it? Barb." And then the next entry on the computer is a reply which reads, "I'm sending over the K9000 Cyberdog gun. It should do the trick. Let me know if you have any operational questions. Aiden." And the next entry reads, "We've had another unfortunate occurrence. While attempting to destroy Mr. Harris's trauma harness, the disaster control team member carrying the gun slipped and fell, dropping the weapon. Unarmed, the team had to flee and seal off the lab. Unfortunately, your K9000 Cyberdog gun prototype was sealed inside X12. From Barb." And from this, we can understand why there is a lone Y-17 harness at the bottom of the X12 Research Facility. Obviously, this is poor Mr. Harris, and he got the Cyberdog gun because some poor soul was trying to kill him or to stop the suit, and he slipped and the gun fell down, and now the suit has been using the gun ever since. We can assume this was probably pre-war, so Mr. Harris has been down there for, well, over 200 years. Pretty freaking crazy, but pretty freaking hilarious, and also quite scary. And real quick, I just wanted to show off the smart light upgrade. If you add it to the light switch and you activate it, it'll increase your science by +5, your repair by +5, and your intelligence by +2 for 12 in-game hours after activating it. So this is a pretty nice little boost, and it is pretty easy to access, at least once you have the sonic emitter upgrade. And as you can see, it turns all of the lights within the sink kind of this greenish color. Pretty cool. Alright everyone, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. The X12 Research Center might be small, but it is definitely quite interesting. I hope you learned something about Fallout New Vegas, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any recommendations for future videos or future ideas, please post them in the comments section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out the X66 Hexcrete Archipelago. Now, this location is actually kind of small, or it's kind of big as far as, like, its impact on the environment. However, there's really nothing going on here. It's just kind of a fast travel point. However, there is some interesting lore about this location. So Hexcrete is a form of experimental concrete developed by the Big MT, similar to concrete, but it can be spontaneously created in these prism-shaped columns, as we can see all around us. And actually, this is not the only appearance of Hexcrete within the Fallout universe. The researchers at Vault 63 in Appalachia also were researching with it in some capacity. And this is because Vault Tech executive Hugo Stoltz had connections out west, or in this one, the Big MT. However, the researchers at the Big MT and the researchers at Vault 63 did not get the desired results with Hexcrete, so it appears it kind of ended in failure. But we have these really cool structures that dot the skyline of Big MT. And here on the world map, you can see the location of the X66 Hexcrete Archipelago. It's literally right next to the X13 Research Center. Now, do be careful when you come here, as a pack of Night Stalkers has made this archipelago their home. So there's always going to be a lot of Night Stalkers in the area. And I was reading on the wiki that sometimes Y-17 trauma units might also come through the area. However, I didn't see any here when I visited, but maybe it'll be different for you. But after killing all the Night Stalkers, that was it for all the enemies. Now, the only items of loot are found to the southwest over here. And as we come over here, you can actually jump on top of the smaller pillars. Sometimes, though, there might be a bit too tall to jump up on, but a lot of the smaller ones you can easily get up, which actually provides good defense against the Night Stalkers. But over here we can find some proton throwing axe, some liquor, a bedroll, there's also a duffel bag, and a poor skeleton. Perhaps he was eaten by some night stalkers. And then over here to the south, we have the Z38 Lightwave Dynamics Research Center. But that will be a story for another day. For now, we want to do some glitches. So using reload dash, we can pretty easily get on top of these pillars. However, I didn't do the save glitch to break my fall because, well, I didn't want to be trapped down there by accident. And yeah, I just thought it was safer just to let myself die. But we did the reload glitch again, this time to a lot more success. It even launched me much higher, as you can see here. And as we came back down, I just saved the game. And if you don't know, in Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 3, if you save the game before hitting the ground, it'll reset your velocity when you respawn. Therefore, you won't die. And from up here, you can get some truly amazing views of the Big MT. And you can kind of use this as a vantage point against any enemies around you, using like missiles or like an anti-material rifle, something like that. But do be careful because there are like these middle holes on these pillars that just kind of fall into the bottom area, which would obviously kill you, or you could easily get stuck down there if you were to do the save glitch. So, you know, that's no bueno. But I guess you could fast travel as long as there's no enemies in the surrounding area. Also, one more thing I wanted to mention, a cut ending to Old World Blues would have included a slide revealing that Good Springs was crushed beneath bizarre hexcrete blocks that stacked to the sky after the think tank was helped by the courier in order to escape the Big MT. That would have been a very, very tragic and sad ending for Good Springs, one that was considered but was ultimately cut from the final game. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. Let me know what you guys think of Hexcrete, and if you have any recommendations or ideas for future videos, please let me know in the comments section below. As always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out the Z38 Lightwave Dynamics Research. This is a station located in the western part of the Big MT, and before the Great War, the staff here were involved with researching and developing a line of hologram projectors which would later be installed at the Sierra Madre Casino and Resort. So obviously this station had connections to Frederick Sinclair, who was a pre-war businessman, and he was a close affiliate of the Big MT and the financier and founder of the Sierra Madre. So as I said, it's located in the western part of the map. It's right next to the X66 Hexcrete Archipelago. And in fact, there are some Hexcrete columns, as you can see, surrounding Z38. And as we approach, we can find this tool cabinet, but there's really nothing inside of it. And then on the door of Z38, we can find a blue stars and stripes, obviously left by Ulysses. And if you didn't know, in the Big MT, these colors actually mean something. Ulysses left red, which indicates a hostile area, white marks the way forward, and blue marks a place with loot or like hidden caches. Now as we enter, we can find this terminal, which has some pretty interesting information on it. We can find that the researchers here were not too fond of Mr. Sinclair, and that they thought his project was very difficult. In fact, when Mr. Sinclair wanted the holograms to have defense mechanisms, it caused a significant delay in the production of the holograms just because it was something they weren't expecting and was going to be difficult to do. Also, we find that they spent a lot of time here trying to perfect Vera Keyes' hologram. Obviously, Vera Keyes was kind of like the mistress or girlfriend of Mr. Sinclair, and they wonder why would they go through all this trouble just to create a simple hologram. But hey, maybe the research was worth it because the holograms and dead money are so freaking annoying. And as we make our way to the middle of the room, we find this beam of light with the valence radii accentuator in the middle of the light, and we can pick it up. But do be careful of the light because if you walk into it, it'll knock you out. And obviously right there, we have a movie poster for Vera Keyes' new movie, or at the time, Love Set Sail. Now, as I said, if you walk into the beam of light, you'll be knocked out for 12 hours, but eventually you'll regain consciousness. If you're on hardcore mode, your sleep and your hydration, everything will deplete, so do be careful. But if you're on just normal mode like I am, it's not really that big of a deal. And then you can put on the accentuator. And with some hats, like Daniel's hat here, you can wear the accentuator and the hat, but other hats will be taken off. There's actually a chart on the wiki if you're curious. Now, if we head over to this other section of the room, we can find a picture of Vera Keys. However, the player cannot interact with this small picture frame. Even if you shoot it or try to pick it up, it just seems like it's a permanent object. And also I wanted to mention about the accentuator. It can be found in other locations in the Big MT, and its big thing is it regenerates HP at a rate of 1 point every 5 minutes, which equates to 12 points every in-game hour. And it heals the player even if you're waiting, even if you're sleeping, and even if you're fast traveling. So not bad, but not great either. And then underneath this terminal, we can find the recipe for energy weapon skill book, so make sure you pick it up. It's a kind of hidden, as you saw, kind of tucked away underneath that computer. And then we have 2 holograms up here, but they just are pretty much just walking around, not doing anything, like a ghost. And on this little area, there's nothing but some junk. Now, do be careful. I almost missed it, but in the corner right there, we're going to walk back, but in the corner there are some proton throwing axes, so make sure you pick those up, because, you know, you can use them, or you can just put them in your storage, whichever you like. Now, if we come out this door, we come out the back entrance, and we can see more graffiti left by Ulysses. And if we walk on down, there's some crates, but the main thing of interest is a dumpster. That's right, we want to do some dumpster diving, because in this one, we can find some plasma grenades and more throwing axes. So, not bad. And there you have it, Z38 Lightwave Dynamics Research Station. This location is pretty cool as far as the lore. It adds a lot to the Sierra Madre and to Frederick Sinclair, and of course it adds a bit to Vera Keys. However, there aren't any enemies here, and the loot is, well, it's mediocre at best, so as far as that is concerned, it's okay. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. If you have any recommendations for future ideas, future videos, please post them in the comments section below. And as always, until next time.
Klein, as useless as the bottle of the same name. Well, except as an example of an object that uselessly tries to fulfill its purpose!
Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out the Big MT West Tunnel. Now this is a train tunnel, obviously in the western part of the map, and I must say with the Hexcrete columns that are around this tunnel, it gives it a very unique appearance. Of course these train tunnels are very generic, kind of copy and paste, throughout Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, but this one looks really freaking cool I think, just because of the Hexcrete that surrounds it. But this tunnel actually has a lot of interesting stuff happening inside, and there's even more interesting stuff happening on the outside, so let's waste no more time and jump on into it. Big MT West Tunnel is located in the west, obviously, in the middle of the map, kind of, just north of the X13 Research Center. Now there will be several sentry bots approaching you from the north, so do be ready to fight them. However, using this missile launcher was extremely effective against them, so hey, maybe just pull out your good old trusty missile launcher. Also, there was some Night Stalkers nearby, just kind of, I don't know, they were kind of freaking out because I was on the train tracks and they had trouble getting up here, so I went down and I ended up killing them. Not too difficult of a fight as long as you have the proper weapons to, well, deal with them. But yeah, Night Stalkers can be a pain in the butt sometimes. Now, when I came back up to the train tracks, there were even more sentry bots waiting for me, but using these missiles, I was able to take care of them, no problem. Now, you might want to come over here because there are some interesting things. So, of course, we have the sentry bots, which we can loot. But more interesting is this truck, which seems to have crashed into the mountain. If you look at the license plate, it says Rocket 88. It's a New Jersey license plate. And this is a reference to the film The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, which the protagonist drives a vehicle with that plate on it through a solid mountain. And so this is a reference to that car from that movie. Pretty interesting, pretty freaking funny. Obviously, at the Big MT, it did not work as well as it did in the movie. Also, you can only see this if you have the Wild Wasteland perk. Now, of course, this train tunnel is for access into the Big MT. Back during the pre-war era, it was probably incredibly important for access to the Big MT. I did want to point out the front of the truck can actually be seen on the other side of the mountain, right there. But since the railway was probably important for supplying the Big MT and getting in equipment, the player can use the elevated railway for a lot of safety, because a lot of enemies have trouble reaching it. Now, if we come over to this small mountaintop over here, we can find two ghouls. One is called number 27, and the other is called number 34. And these two ghouls somehow escaped from the nearby Little Yangtze, which was a pre-war internment camp used to intern Chinese and Chinese American citizens in the pre-war era. Obviously, these ghouls somehow managed to escape the camp despite their explosive collars, and I promise you we'll be talking a lot more about the Yangtze, or Little Yangtze, in a future video. But I just wanted to point out that it's right next to the train tunnel here, so you just know what's on that little mountaintop. Now, as we move our way into the actual tunnel, you're going to find a lot of protectrons inside. However, they're pretty easy to kill. I just used the pulse gun, and it took care of them pretty quickly. Now, as soon as you enter, there's going to be a locked door on your right, and you want to open it up because inside we can find a recipe for the unarmed skill book, so pretty darn good. Also, these footlockers usually contain ammunition in them, so make sure you go ahead and you loot those. Now, the interior of this tunnel is not really anything to cry home about. It's pretty similar to any train tunnel you might find in Fallout 3, but it's a little bit smaller than like Fallout 3 subways. But nonetheless, we can still find these interesting protectrons, and also we have this unique protectron called the Custodian. However, we really don't know much about the Custodian, what his role is, or what he was doing, but there is a mop in front of him here, so a lot of people suspect, or just kind of are assuming that maybe he was still doing his cleaning duties in this train area. Now, once you've cleared out all of the enemies, there is a few items of note. One over here, we can find the Lair mod auxiliary recharger clip. So pretty darn good, make sure you pick that up. And there's also a hard-locked door and a hard-locked footlocker. So as long as you have 75 lockpick or some like magazines in order to get 75 lockpick, go ahead and open them up. The footlocker just has some ammunition, nothing really that special. But behind the door, we can find more of the train tunnel, and if we walk on down, we can find a skeleton along with a Saturnite fist next to it. You definitely want to pick that up because there's only a few of them across the big MT. However, there is a chance that lobotomites might be carrying the power fist, so sometimes you can get lucky and it'll be on a lobotomite's body. Also, as you can see at the end of the tunnel, there is another skeleton and some ammunition boxes, so make sure you take a peek and see what you get. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. Hope you enjoyed the Big MT West Tunnel. If you guys have any recommendations or ideas for future videos, please post them in the comments section below. Also, as I was making this video, I just surpassed 4,000 subscribers. Just wanted to give a huge shout out to everyone who subscribes and comments and likes these videos. I wouldn't be here without any of you. Thank you guys so much for the support. You guys are freaking awesome. As always, guys, until next time. On February 19th, 1942, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066. This order ordered the incarceration of Japanese Americans, about 125,000 people across the United States. At a time when America was bringing hope to much of the world, it also destroyed the lives of many of its citizens. It's quite a tragic moment and an otherwise heroic and triumphant time for the United States of America. Today, this executive order is viewed as a very poor decision and something that was unconstitutional. But, of course, in the world of Fallout, the American government would follow a very similar path. As war between China and the United States broke out in 2066, the United States very quickly issued a very similar order. Executive Order 99,066. Obviously, this is a play on Roosevelt's Order 99,066. This order ordered the internment of all Chinese and Chinese Americans in concentration camps across the United States. And if you were unfortunate enough, you would have been sent to Little Yangtze. This concentration camp, located in the Big MT, served as a place of research on human subjects. A very terrible fate for all of those illegally imprisoned here. In fact, among think tank executives, they outright considered the camp and its inhabitants to be nothing more than a human farm. Just terrible. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Now, the reason this intro is a bit darker or a bit more real than normal is, well, because of course, like I said, there's a lot of connections and parallels between what actually happened in World War II and how the creators of Fallout designed the internment of Chinese Americans. But also, this location hits a bit close to home for me because, well, none of you know this, but I actually have Japanese ancestry. And my family did have some dealings with the Japanese internment camps in World War II. So for me, it's an issue that is important and something that I think should be remembered so it never happens again. And with that, let's jump into Little Yangtze. And as you can see, Little Yangtze is located in the northwestern part of the Big MT, just a bit northeast of the Big MT West Tunnel. Now, as you approach, there will be a ton of sentry bots to the north of Little Yangtze, so make sure you take them out. I just used a missile launcher, and honestly, that made things a lot easier. It even kind of made one of the sentry bots go crazy and started attacking the other sentry bots. So it has all worked out very well for me. Of course, maybe you don't have as many missiles, but do be careful if you come here because there are well, pardon my French, but a fuck ton of sentry bots. In fact, they actually just kept coming and they didn't stop coming, as you'll see later. Now, I mentioned this in my last video, but if you have the Wild Wasteland trait, you will find this truck stuck halfway into the side of this mountain with a green puddle underneath it. Now, if you look at the license plate, it's a New Jersey license plate, which reads Rocket 88. And this is the same name as the rocket truck that Buckaroo Banzai drives in the film The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, in which he drives through a mountain. Obviously here, though, it wasn't nearly as successful as in the movie. A pretty funny, kind of cool little Easter egg, but again, you have to have Wild Wasteland. After this, if we follow the train tracks, we can come around and we can actually find the front of the truck here, or what appears to be the front of the truck. So maybe it kind of made it through the mountain, just it got cut in half. And then if you head up on this hill, which is just to the south of Little Yangtze, but not before we loot some of these wooden crates, but up on this hill we will find number 27 and number 34. These are two ghoulified survivors of the Chinese internment camp, and their numbers, 34 and 27, are a reference to the novel The Count of Monte Cristo, in which the protagonist, Dantes, is assigned the number 34, and his cellmate is assigned the number 27. How did these two ghouls escape? Well, we're not entirely certain, but perhaps there was a failed experiment with Father Elijah, but we'll talk more about Father Elijah later in the video. But you'll notice both ghouls have explosive collars on them, however, for whatever reason, they didn't detonate. Also, when I came back the second time, there was this dead Securitron up here. I have no idea why he was up here. The first time I came here, he wasn't here. The second time he was. I was really confused. If you guys know what was happening here or why it's there, please let me know. But from this hill, you can get a pretty good overview of the concentration camp or the internment camp right below you. There's a guard tower and then another building across from us. And while I was up here, I was attacked by more sentry bots. Again, like I said, they just keep coming and they don't stop coming. But I was able to kill these sentry bots too with my anti-material rifle. One of them tried to flank me and came up on the ridge next to me, but yeah, we were able to kill him. After that, I made my way down into the camp, where we can find several ghoulified survivors. These survivors are hostile, however, they appear to not be feral, or at least I don't think so, because they don't act like feral ghouls. They can still wield weapons. They seem to understand that their collars will blow their heads off if they leave the prison. So it's kind of sad that we have to kill them, that we cannot help them, but they've been trapped inside this tiny little facility for, well, over 200 years. So they're probably, mentally insane. They're probably not okay in the head. And, well, after everything that's happened to them, they are probably not likely to ever trust an English speaker ever again. And if you leave the facility, you'll notice that they run away from you because their collars will otherwise detonate if they try to leave. So, obviously, they're kind of smart, or at least they know their situation. But very terrible what's happened to them. Now, in 3 of the tents, we can just find barracks. There are some footlockers that just have, like, bottle caps and random junk in it. Next to the cage here, we can find all of these beds piled up along with the skeleton. Perhaps they were trying to escape with these beds. There's also a truck on the other side with more beds. Not sure why there's so many beds, but bed, 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 bed. Then we find this other tent with more bottle caps. Here we can find a very disturbing scene, a mass grave. There's several of these wooden tombstones, and if you actually listen to the tombstones very carefully, you can hear whispering, kind of haunting. Inside of this tent that is in the northeast, we can find the recipe for survival skill book. You're definitely a survivor if you survive 200 years in this camp. And across from that tent, we can find the mess hall. Just some benches and picnic tables and, well, a refrigerator. After that, we can go over to the guard tower, but we have to open this gate, which is very slow. And up here, we can find ammunition boxes and also Father Elijah's advanced lair. Of course, this is a unique weapon that once belonged to Father Elijah. And if we enter inside of the guard tower, we are greeted by some deactivated bomb collars and a broken detonator, along with this kind of a mess and a dead survivor. If we go on the terminal, we can find out everything that happened here, which I think is very interesting. The first pre-war entry reads, "The government shipped in the first batch of dissidents today. 3 whole trainloads of communist infiltrators. Half of them don't even speak English, so we had to show them where to go with our nightsticks. They got the point eventually. The docs are already talking about research subjects. Guess that'll help advance the war effort." The second pre-war entry reads, "One of the prisoners who speaks a little English, I guess he's become the unofficial spokesman, came to the commandant's office today screaming about hungry ghosts snatching his people up in the night. The commandant told him to give up the ignorant superstitions of a bygone era and had him thrown in the cooler for 3 weeks. I've seen some of the new robots they're developing here, and I gotta wonder where they got the brains from." The third pre-war entry reads, "Another escape attempt last night. We rounded them all up and processed the escapees, but these little bastards are determined. We've got triple shifts on the camp around the clock, and the extra hours are eating up morale. Commandant says he's put in a requisition to use the camp as a field test for the new total pacification collars the scientists have been working on. Maybe then I can get some goddamn sleep." So here we can see the development of bomb collars, or as they call them, pacification collars, along with the experiments being performed on these prisoners. Then the next entries are from Father Elijah. The first entry reads, "Second day at pre-war concentration camp. Kept China citizens here before the war. Radiation turned them, had to keep them in camp with collars. Explains why some of these slave collars exist. Always wondered. Some were clearly pre-war tech. Researching the collar frequencies, touchy. Circuit architecture is messy. Deconstructing them, taking time. Must be careful. Can't be spotted by local robots or insane brains from the dome will try to haul me back there. Then research me." And the next entry, which is day 3, reads, "No sign of that courier from before. He stays out of my way, I'll stay out of his. Been thinking about that Sierra Madre he mentioned. If he's right, I just need to find the casino radio frequency to track it down. Wouldn't need his help. If the working holograms and toxic gas are preserved there, might be easier to study them there with no robots to interfere. And those dispensers. Might have use for those as well." And the next entry, which is day 4, reads, "Day 4. Still continuing research. Found way to deactivate collar after some failures, just a few headless ghouls. It's been hard to go fishing in the camp without one of them trying to run the gate and their heads exploding. Damn collars, twitchy. Need to ration the mentats, giving me migraines." And the final entry is day 4, addendum. "While setting up the radios to monitor dome and robots, thought I saw glint, scope, from the building on the other side of the compound. Should check it out. Make sure I'm not being watched. Might be that courier. Still, he would have come straight up rather than hiding. Instinct says it's someone else." So not only does this terminal give us some insight into Little Yangtze and the preservation collars, it also gives us a lot of background on Father Elijah. We can learn about where he learned about the collars, how he discovered how to work with those after a lot of failed experiments on some poor Chinese prisoners. Plus, we can see his ideas forming with the Sierra Madre. Also, this camp is where Father Elijah met Christine Royce. In fact, he lured her inside of the camp, then deliberately provoked the inmates to attack her. One of the inmates' collars exploded, and Christine was severely wounded to the point that she lost consciousness, and well, the rest is history. Wow, that was a lot to unpack, but we're not finished inside of here yet. We can find the book chute upgrade, mulching against the coffee maker, and then also on the table you can take these deactivated bomb collars. However, unfortunately you cannot wear them. They're just there for miscellaneous items. And we can also find these proton throwing axes in the corner. So some good stuff that you can pick up and make sure you get it on your way here. Then if we go across, we can find the building where Christine was held up in and where Father Elijah saw her scope. Now, in the game, it doesn't appear to be that far away from the guard tower, but perhaps the scale is just a little bit off and it's actually bigger than it is. Who knows? But anyways, we can open this ammunition box, and then we can find Christine's COS silencer rifle, which is just a unique variant of the sniper rifle, but since Christine Royce is an absolute badass, we're definitely going to be taking that rifle. And while I was here, I was attacked by more, well, you guessed it, sentry bots. Also, there was a small gang of lobotomites that approached me, but using this decrepit building, I was able to actually take care of them pretty effectively. I did lose a lot of health in the fight though, but I ended up winning thanks to the anti-material rifle, and, well, this nice destroyed building. Also, fun fact, if you turn up your volume to very high and you go next to the gate where there are speakers, these speakers emit the same sound as the ones from Dead Money, obviously because of the explosive collars. Alright everyone, and there you have it, Little Yangtze. This location is really amazing for several reasons. It has a lot of lore, both for the world of Fallout, for Father Elijah, and the Sierra Madre, Dead Money DLC, of course, and also it is connected to real life. It is heavily influenced by what happened to Japanese Americans during the Second World War. Obviously, though, there was no kind of crazy scientific experiments going on with Japanese Americans. I do want to make that clear. And so far in the Fallout universe, Little Yangtze is the only Chinese internment camp to appear in the series. However, it is worth noting that in Fallout 3, we can discover an internment truck, which was a truck carrying Chinese prisoners, and this is located near Satcom Array in W-07C. Man, that is a mouthful, but I did make a video about that location in my Unexplored Capital Wasteland, so if you're interested in the internment truck, please check out that video. I'll put it in the description below. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. Have any recommendations for future videos, future ideas, please post them in the comments section below, and as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out construction site, which is obviously some kind of construction site for a research facility within the Big MT. Not sure what it was, but this location is pretty small. It has some kind of tough enemies and some interesting loot. So let's waste no more time and let's jump into it. So construction site is located just northwest of Little Yangtze in the northwesternmost corner of the map. Now, as you approach, it might appear to be empty. As you can see, I was approaching here, and, well, I couldn't really find anything. But there are some wooden crates that you might want to check out. But eventually, you're going to see this construction drone foreman, and then just construction drones. Obviously, the foremans are the ones in charge. Now, I actually found these construction drones to be somewhat difficult. Now, there was also a Mr. Handy here, but he was actually pretty easy to take out. On this middle kind of like concrete block, there is a footlocker, which contains random ammunition. Always check the footlockers in Big MT because they often have ammunition. But as I was saying, the construction drones were a bit difficult to fight just because they had a lot of health. However, they're not very good at aiming or shooting or dealing damage. So just kind of a troublesome enemy. Now, throughout the construction site, you're going to find these big red crystals. And I'm not actually sure what they are. After some research, a lot of people think they're actually wolfenite, which is kind of a bright orange, yellow to red-orange crystals, which match the color of these crystals. Also, if you have Wild Wasteland perk and you go down in this little ditch, you can find 7 gnomes with pickaxes and lanterns, obviously mining the crystals. And of course, this is an Easter egg to the 19th century Brothers Grimm fairy tale Snow White, along with the 1912 Broadway play adaptation, and of course the 1937 animated film by Disney. And if we head on to the back of construction site, we can kind of find this collapsed antenna, and next to this we can find a holotape. There's a skeleton right next to me here, and we can pick up this holotape, which is a sink upgrade for water production. Basically, if you give empty bottles to the sink, it'll give you back purified water. Now over here, I didn't find any mention of this. I found it pretty humorous. We can find a skeleton with some blood splattered from a boulder. Clearly this poor, maybe worker, was killed by a falling boulder. So, yeah, very sad, very unfortunate. Now in the middle we have this giant crane, and you can actually climb to the top, and actually you kind of want to because there's some good loot at the very top. So just walk along, come up here, and then we can find the valence radii accentuator, I can say it right. And then there's also a wooden crate with random loot inside. Also, you get a pretty beautiful view from the top here, so make sure to check it out. Alright everyone, that pretty much covers construction site. Like I said, this is kind of a small area, and who knows what they are building here, or who knows what those red crystals are for. Do you guys have any theories? Let me know in the comments section below. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any recommendations for future videos, future ideas, please post them in the comment section below. And as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out the Signal Hills transmitter. This is just a small building that has a radio tower next to it, but while it might be small and might seem insignificant, it does have some interesting lore behind it as far as Father Elijah. So let's waste no more time and check it out. Now, Signal Hills transmitter is located just north of the sink, a little bit east of Little Yangtze, pretty easy to reach. Now, as you approach, you're going to notice that the building is actually kind of behind this rock. And there are some interesting things on top, but you can't really reach the top from down here. You have to go around and kind of go up the mountain. Now, do be careful. You might encounter a lot of enemies here, like I did. There were some Mr. Handies across from me, or sorry, Mr. Gutsies, really. But they're actually pretty easy to kill from far away. They're not so accurate, and using the anti-material rifle, it wasn't much of a problem. After that, we can go inside, and it's just a very small room. There really isn't a whole lot. However, towards the entrance, we can find two things of note. One is a recipes holotape for barter skill books, and the other is an auto dock upgrade for hairstyling enhancements. One is underneath the shelf, and one is here next to the typewriter, kind of leaning against him. But that's pretty much all for loot inside of the actual building. But like I said, there are some more things on the roof. But as I exited, I was attacked by this sentry bot. I kind of panicked because I was just kind of getting ambushed, and they had a really good advantage. So I took out my alien blaster, which I cannot get any more ammunition for, so it's just kind of an emergency weapon, and used it in this situation to easily kill the sentry bot and that Mr. Gutsy. Now on the roof we can find Elijah's advanced lair, a unique weapon. We can also find the prismatic lens, a lair mod, on this holotape leaning against a toolbox. And besides that, we have some ammunition boxes, as you can see, and against one of the ammunition boxes there is a note. This torn out journal page is leaning against an ammunition crate, and it reads, "Set up camp here after Yangtze attack. 2 exposed here. Transmitters vulnerable. Hacked it, set up remote links so can access it anytime. Need to find spot closer to North Train Tunnel with clear broadcast LOS to here. Canyons are too dangerous. Can't go back to Yangtze. There is that weather station northwest that drew that courier here. But going there sounds like trouble. For now, going to scout the waste disposal site. Then around the perimeter of that Securitron plant, see if I can find a more defensible position." Obviously, Father Elijah is talking about Ulysses as the courier, and we can see that he made Signal Hills his kind of home or shelter after the incident with Christine at Little Yangtze. Now, after I got finished reading the note, I was attacked by a lot of lobotomites. They just kind of came out of nowhere. I was actually kind of surprised. I was just reading this note in peace, enjoying the beautiful surroundings, but yeah, you know, whatever. We also have these red crystals kind of dotting the landscape and this canyon. It's very beautiful, I think. And if we go across this collapsed like radio tower, well, we find this wooden crate, but we can find some very interesting things on the other side, so definitely make sure to make your way over here. We can find several spore plants, including the unique enemy, Dionea muscipula, and this enemy actually has a unique weapon on it, the corrosive glove. But for now, just make sure to take out the spore plants, and we can actually find these seed packages in this area, so make sure you pick them up. Now, these spore plants are quite easy to kill if you use some kind of fire weapon, unlike how I started with bullets. And then there's the corrosive glove. Make sure you pick that up. And inside of the fountain, we can find one of these Valens Radi accentuators, which slowly regenerate your health. Then we can cross this canyon again on this pipe, and we will find more spore plants. So make sure you kill them pretty easily. And there is another pack of seeds, so make sure you pick these up. This is a part of the quest Field Research, and you're going to have to find a few of these scattered around the Big MT. 2 of them are located here. And then down below we can see the weather station, which is a story for another day. Alright everyone, I hope you enjoyed this video, and yeah, Signal Hills transmitter might be a bit of a smaller location, but it still has some interesting lore and adds a lot to the story of Father Elijah. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys have any recommendations or ideas for future videos, future locations, please let me know in the comment section below, and as always, until next time. As you make your way through this curving canyon, you have all of these red glowing crystals lighting up the way forward. We have some pipes in front of you. We have some symbols that were created by a man named Ulysses. And then we find the X13 Meteorological Station. When you approach this place at night, it really does look like a supervillain's lair or something. Anyways, guys, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. As we just said, today we're going to be checking out the X17 Meteorological Station. This research station, hidden in this canyon, was designed to run experiments on controlling the weather and seeing how it could influence the weather in the surrounding area. Now, this research station is located right in between the construction site and the Signal Hills transmitter, again located in this canyon. Now, if you approach from above, you can use these pipes where there are landmines, so be careful, but we can use these pipes to reach it. There was some kind of wooden platform on there, probably for maintenance, a long time ago. Then we can make our way down pretty easily without taking any damage, and we'll find the entrance. Alternatively, you can approach from the canyon, as we did in the beginning at night. We'll find this filing cabinet with a red mark from Ulysses, and then we can make our way to the back and we can find the entrance where we find a blue mark from Ulysses. As we enter, we find ourselves in a room with some probably research equipment, and then across from us in this very large research center, there will be some Mr. Gutsies. And there is a unique named Mr. Gutsy here, named Iron Belly. Now, at first I was trying to use a missile launcher to take him out, but it was proving not to be very effective. However, Elijah's lair is actually really good at taking on robots, so I'm glad I picked up these weapons in previous videos. And on Iron Belly, we can find these 5 protonic inversal throwing axes, so make sure you pick them up. They're very valuable, or you can use them to fight. You can do whatever you want. Then we find this very large room, and up here we can find like the testing area. And up here we can find a small scale model of Higgs Village, which is also located in the Big MT. However, these buildings don't really do anything, so we just want to go over to the research center. Or not really a research center, but the control center. Up here we find this raised building, and we can find some unique loot inside, but I was being shot at by this Mr. Gutsy, so I had to kill him really quick. I found 3 Mr. Gutsies inside. Now, here we can find Mad Scientist Scrubs. There is another pair located in the sink. There's only 2 pairs in the entire game. And I just found out my armor is completely destroyed, which was probably making my fights a lot more difficult. But anyways, this is what the Mad Scientist uniform looks like, and I think it looks absolutely beautiful on my character. And behind us, we can find a map of that of the Divide. And if you didn't know, the weather station was used as a base of operation when Ulysses was in the Big Empty. Sometime before 2281, as he was traveling, he noticed that there were really strange weather patterns surrounding the Big Empty. He came over here and he found this facility. And then he used this facility and its cartographical suit to locate the largest still intact missile silos in the region, which was, of course, the Divide. But enough about Ulysses, let's get some more loot. Now, there are 2 footlockers in the control center, but there's really nothing inside of them. Now, on this terminal here, or on this little research panel, there will be a snow globe. However, for whatever reason, the snow globe was invisible for me. But it should be right here at the end of this little shelf, just on the control panel. I could still pick it up, thankfully. I don't know why it was invisible. I couldn't find any other instances of this glitch. Just something that is very Fallout. Then after that, we can activate the testing area, and it'll start raining, and there's all of this electricity in the sky. Now, there's something interesting here with the raindrops. These droplets will always face the same direction relative to the player character. It doesn't matter which direction you face. It doesn't matter if you look up or down. These water droplets will follow the player. I don't know why this is, but I just found it very amusing. And also worth noting, beneath the testing area, we can find the soggy duffel bag, which just contains some ammo and some other random loot that may or may not be useful to you. Either way, make sure you check it out. But besides that, that's pretty much all that is inside the facility. There are some lockers around and stuff that contain random loot, but there was nothing that great. Now, the next thing I want to know is if you could get on top of the facility, which you can easily do if you come over from construction site. However, I didn't realize this at the time, but there's actually an elevator which will take you into or out of the facility. I just didn't see the elevator when I was exploring. Now, when you come out, do be very careful, because you will always be ambushed by these Y-17 trauma override harnesses. I didn't have the proper armor, and I was really caught off guard by these guys, but I did manage to survive, luckily, thanks to the anti-material rifle. But do be careful if you use the elevator to leave. If you just go on the roof normally, like from construction sites, they do not spawn, but if you use the elevator, they do spawn. So be careful. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. I hope you enjoyed this episode. The Meteorological Station is really cool. I love the little testing area. It just feels really, I don't know, amusing and cute almost. And of course, there's a lot of interesting lore about Ulysses and the Divide. Now, if you guys have any recommendations for future videos, future ideas, please post them in the comments section below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, until next time. The Magnetohydraulics Complex. Now, if you're like me, you're wondering what in the hell is magnetohydraulics? Well, it's coming from magnetohydrodynamics, which is basically the study of how fluids interact with magnets, specifically liquids that have magnetic fields, and therefore they'll interact with magnets. Now, magnetohydrodynamics is an important field of research. It's very important for explaining things like solar flares and solar wind. It would be very important in a nuclear fusion reactor, which we would need to control hot plasma with magnets, and potentially used in some technology, such as designing pumps with no moving parts for things like liquid metal cooling. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out the Magnetohydraulics Complex, and I went over all of the science about magnetohydrodynamics, which is a very interesting thing of research, but a lot of it just goes right over my head, so if you know more about it, please feel free to comment about it in the comments section below. Also, this location was recommended to me by Fake Slim Shady, who's been a huge supporter of the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy. Now, this location is just north of the sink and directly east of Signal Hill's transmitter. Now, it can be a bit difficult to find from above, but if you approach from above like I did, you just have to kind of make your way down this canyon, and then you can find the entrance, Magnetohydraulics Complex. And it's just kind of this building in the side of this cliff here. It is very well hidden, so who knows what kind of research they were doing inside. Next to the entrance, as you can see there are some duffel bags with random loot. As we enter, we find that the entire complex has pretty much been completely flooded. Who knows what transpired here or what happened? And if you have the Wild Wasteland perk, immediately to your left, you're going to find the Walking Eyes. There's 3 of them inside of the complex. This is a reference to the TV show The Venture Bros episode Fallen Arches, where Dr. Venture uses his prototype walking eye as a lure to attract the attention of supervillains. Additionally, Dr. Venture is voiced by James Uberniak, who also voices Dr. O in Old World Blues. So all in all, a really cool Easter egg here, but unfortunately we don't have any more information about these walking eyes, besides the fact that it is an Easter egg. Now as we continue exploring the facility, we're going to find this main building to our left. We have another walking eye, and next to the walking eye, we can find the sync project, Sync. This is necessary for getting the sync to activate, which is important for all of my friends have off switches. But besides that, there isn't a whole lot of loot inside of this room, so we need to go diving. Now, unfortunately, the diveable area is not very big, but that doesn't mean we can't find some good loot. If you swim on down towards these tool cabinets, well, there's nothing in the cabinets themselves, but just go past the cabinets, and over here in the corner, you can find proton throwing axes, which is pretty good. They're pretty valuable. And if you go to the very bottom, you're going to find this small kind of room with a collapsed portion that unfortunately we cannot access any further. There's a bunch of drained small energy cells down here, but not really a whole lot, but there is a footlocker with random ammunition inside. So pretty good. As we come out, we're going to find a toolbox. Go to the right of the toolbox, and you're going to find a ton of these energy cells. 200 to be exact, so pretty good find. And a toaster. Also, at the surface of the area, you're going to find a lot of floating stuff and a footlocker in the back corner. But with the floating stuff, you can find a ton of microfusion cells, so make sure you swim around and you find them. The microfusion cells next to the waterfall are drained, but you might be able to use them for crafting. And if you head on over to the back corner, there's going to be some more microfusion cells just kind of floating in the water. Now, I don't know if these are a consistent spawn or they just kind of float around and go wherever they want, so make sure you take a look around. Now, normally, once you've picked up the holotape for the sync, you will be attacked by robo-scorpions upon exiting the complex. However, for whatever reason, the robo-scorpions didn't spawn, even though I'm on very hard difficulty. But back at the sync, we can plug in the sync holotape, which activates our newest friend.
You're filthy. I suppose you'll want to clean up then? Oh, it's just so unsanitary. Do you know how many germs are in 1 cubic centimeter of dirt? 70, 100, gajillion. Would you want that getting washed down your gullet day in and day out? I didn't think so.
And yes, Miss Sync here's kind of not so nice and is very afraid of germs. Now, if you head on over to construction site, as we've already done, you can get the Sync Upgrade Water Production, which will turn any empty bottle into purified water, which is really good if you're playing with survival mode enabled. And I think that sums up the Magnetohydraulics Complex. However, as Fake Slim Shady said, this place is quite interesting, but it's also leaving some to be desired, and I wonder if the devs just didn't have time to develop it to its full potential. It would be really cool if there was more lore behind the walking eyes, besides just being an Easter egg. Also, it would have been pretty cool to explore some new aquatic creature that is only in Old World Blues. After all, there are all kinds of experiments and stuff going on here. The one place with a ton of water doesn't really feature anything special. Alright everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Mojave, and I hope you learned something about Fallout or the real world. I know I learned a lot about the real world making this video. As always guys, thank you so much for watching. If you have any ideas or recommendations for future videos, future ideas, please post them in the comment section below. And as always, until next time.
America sleeps. And until it's dead, I carry it. Just like I carried you. More than hope. Belief. There's voices here in the big empty. I want to talk to them. Not like your Elijah did. Got questions. Want to hear history give its answer.
Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out Ulysses Point, which has been heavily recommended to me by many of you, including KLEL4697, West G3, and of course, Chungus 666. Now, I'll be honest, I had very little recollection of this place because it's actually very easy to miss, and it's actually a pretty small location, but it includes some important information about Ulysses and Christine. So, let's go ahead and dive into it. And as you can see here on the world map, Ulysses Point is just south of the sink. It is right next to Higgs Village. Now, as you approach, be careful of lobotomites. I faced several, however, it was a little bit glitchy, and I'll show you why in a second, but basically I had this lone of lobotomite, and he was pretty easy to deal with just because I had the high ground. Now, as I actually approached Ulysses Point, which, as you can see here, is just a cave, and we have the typical Ulysses marking on the cabinet out here, a lobotomite came walking out of the cave. So, of course, I shot him immediately in the head with my anti-material rifle. I killed him. However, behind me, several lobotomites spawned for whatever reason, one of them literally right behind me, and they started attacking me. And I couldn't actually get inside of the cave that far because there's an invisible barrier. It's not like Skyrim caves where you can kind of sneak inside a bit. So I had to kind of engage in a tricky but yet successful firefight. And as we enter, we will find this small cave. There are several ammunition crates and medical kits in here, as we will see. So if you need ammunition or medical supplies, this might be a good place. Also, we have several crates here that are filled with various ingredients. Again, might be helpful. But as you make your way through, there are a few locked boxes, like this average locked one, and as we will see later on, there is a hard-locked medical kit. You will also notice that there are 2 sleeping bags inside and a small campfire, and the reason for the 2 sleeping bags is Ulysses and Christine stayed here for some time, specifically after Christine was rescued by Ulysses at the Y-17 medical facility. And near the sleeping bag in the back corner, we can find these 2 patient logs. Now, these logs are very long. They're about 1.5 minutes each. So if you don't want to listen to them, I will give you a quick summary. If you do want to listen to them, though, I'll leave them at the end of the video in their entirety. But basically, when Christine was at the Y-17 medical facility, following her disastrous encounter with Father Elijah at Little Yangtze, the prototype autodocs primarily operated on her brain, cutting and applying electrodes, trying to make her a lobotomite. However, she was rescued by Ulysses, and she recovered in this cave for several days. During her time here, her and Ulysses talked a lot about history and politics, talking about the new California Republic, Caesar's Legion, and of course, the Brotherhood of Steel, which Christine used to be a member of. And Christine and Ulysses have a huge disagreement about the Brotherhood of Steel because Ulysses thinks it's a failure. Now, during these holotapes, Ulysses met with the think tank and received a lot of information, and he revealed to Christine that Elijah had left Big MT going after the Sierra Madre, and of course, Christine would follow him. So, pretty interesting stuff, and we can learn that a lot of these characters that we meet in the DLCs are all kind of connected. Now, over here we can find the hard-locked first aid box, which had some pretty decent medical supplies. And as I left Ulysses Point, I was again attacked by a lobotomite. So be careful, there's always lobotomites in this area. Now, if you come up around and you come up this hill, you're going to find this small satellite dish. There's 2 metal boxes at the bottom of it containing some okay loot, and there should be some proton throwing axes next to it. However, for whatever reason, they were not there for me. And then across from the satellite, we can find some other good loot. Now, I just wanted to point out, behind Ulysses Point, we have this kind of green toxic waste that is radioactive. Don't know why it's here, what purpose it serves. Just thought it was kind of random, and that I would point it out because it is easy to miss. Alright everyone, thank you so much for watching the Unexplored Mojave. Ulysses Point is freaking awesome. It adds a lot to the lore behind his character and of course Christine. Listening to their little political talks and debates are very interesting, and I highly recommend giving it a listen. As always guys, if you have any recommendations or ideas for future videos, future locations, please post them in the comments section below. Thank you guys so much for all of the support, for always watching, leaving comments. You guys are so freaking awesome, and as always, until next time.
Don't want to argue philosophy with you. Brotherhood are preservationists. Tech in the wrong hands, it's dangerous. Mojave's proof.
No denying that. Proof's here in this crater, all around us. Your tribe, the Brotherhood, haven't met many of you. Wanted to. Thought you might be the last chance for the Mojave, the West, the East. But you're all the same mind. Obsessed.
Elijah is obsessed. He's mad. It's why they ordered his execution.
Two are more alike than you know. Too wrapped up in the wrong bits of history to see ahead. Not judging. I know how it is. People are like couriers. You and him. Sometimes don't even know the message they bring. You all had a new flag. Thought maybe new ideas along with it. What you believe isn't any better than the bear or bull. No future in either.
So says the man with the old world flag on his back. America, the Commonwealth, burned away.
America sleeps, and until it's dead, I carry it. Just like I carried you. More than hope. Belief. There's voices here in the big empty. I want to talk to them. Not like your Elijah did. Got questions. Want to hear history give its answer.
Didn't think you'd make it back.
Almost didn't. Got my answers. Your Elijah, he met the gods in this place. Did a good job of making them question the way of things.
Do you know where he went?
He's gone to the Sierra Madre. That's a special kind of hell. He won't come back. Someone smarter, tougher is going to kill him. If the Madre doesn't.
I have to go after him.
Not going to talk you out of it. Know what it means to track someone you share history with. Got a meeting of my own.
That courier?
Get him to come to me. Got a message for him. Like the message he had for me. Make them walk the road west, straight and true. Sink their feet in old world ash. Let storms tear at them. See the divide. See what happened.
The divide? There's nothing there.
Nothing there. Like the big empty. The Sierra Madre. No. The old world sleeps there. Sure as the flag I carry. The courier knows the way. And at the divide, he and I, there, we'll have an ending to things.
Higgs Village is by far one of the most fascinating places in the Big MT. It shows us a lot about the scientist of the think tank. At first glance, it bears a strong resemblance to Tranquility Lane from Fallout 3. Both of these cul-de-sacs feature 6 identical houses surrounding a middle portion. Just in Tranquility Lane, this was a playground, whereas in Higgs Village, it is a water fountain. And while both of these places were involved with cruel scientific experiments, that's about as far as the comparisons go. You see, Tranquility Lane was home to the innocent and unsuspecting victims of Vault 112. Meanwhile, Higgs Village was home to the scientists of the Big MT, who themselves were the ones conducting the cruel experiments. And as time went on, especially after they transferred their brains to the brain bots, their work became more sinister and more debauched. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out Higgs Village. And while this location is very important, it is actually quite easy to miss because it's not a required location to visit during your trek across Old World Blues. And with that being said, I actually don't have a lot of recollection about this location, so I highly recommend that you check it out in your next playthrough of Fallout New Vegas, because it's a place I don't remember very well. Make sure you give it a good look, check out every corner, because there are so many interesting things within. And I also wanted to mention that this location was recommended to me by Black Wolf 91-KZ6MF and Wes G3. Thank you guys so much for always watching and all of the support, and I hope you guys enjoy the video, and everyone else, let's dive on into it. And of course, here's the location of Higgs Village. It is directly south of the think tank, right next to Ulysses Point. Now, as you approach Higgs Village, there's a small mountain just north of the entrance where we can find some grenade boxes, so make sure you go ahead and see what you can find inside of those. And then we can approach this large hangar-like structure, and as we enter, we come into this cul-de-sac. Now, this fountain in the middle, you notice, is working for me. However, that's only because I've been to the X17 Meteorological Research Station. If you haven't been there yet and you haven't activated the weather test, the fountain will not be running. So make sure to head on over to X17 and make sure to leave the test running. If you turn off the test, the fountain at Higgs Village will also turn off. Also, you'll notice that the village underneath the testing area at X17 is simply a model village of Higgs Village. And as we enter Higgs Village, we immediately have to go to our right, and you'll notice here there are some foot lockers and toolboxes that we can get some random loot in. This one had some pretty good ammunition. And as we make our way down, if we go in between these crates, in the back there is a toolbox, which will contain some random chems and medical supplies, so pretty good. And then we can enter into the central plaza. There's some benches around, there's a lot of grass, flowers. It is quite beautiful, and it's also very scary. Obviously, the scientists created this cul-de-sac to kind of represent the idealized American life in the 1950s. Within the fountain, we can find several bottle caps, including a super stim pack. However, the water inside cannot be interacted with, meaning we cannot drink it. However, if you walk towards the center of the fountain, the mechanics with the water are really weird because you can actually swim up the waterfall like so. It creates this really funny animation where it looks like you're swimming in mid-air. However, I couldn't actually get into the center of the fountain, even though I tried hard. The order in which we will investigate all the houses is from the entrance. We will go counterclockwise. The first house here is House 000. Obviously, it is home to Dr. O, also known as Dr. Zero. As we come in, there is a Securitron lying on the floor next to us, and there's also a footlocker which will contain random loot. And we can see there was some kind of commotion in this house. A lot of the furniture is flipped over, books are flying off the bookshelves. Something maybe bad or chaotic happened here. In the kitchen, we can find a portrait of Mr. House, a very famous portrait. This portrait is actually inspired by a portrait of Howard Hughes. And as we can see here, Dr. O really hates Mr. House. He was throwing knives into the portrait, and it's just kind of, torn apart. So we can see his true hatred for Mr. House here, and also through dialogue, we can learn more about it. As we come upstairs, we can find another Securitron that's been destroyed. He really doesn't like those Securitrons, does he? And there's all kinds of technological equipment up here. And in this back room, we can find, more books on the floor, who would have guessed. And on top of the computer here, we can find an audio sample for a tarantula. And this will upgrade the sonic emitter. Also, there is a poster for the Museum of Technology in here, which appears in Fallout 3. Also, kind of hidden underneath this electrical equipment over here is a recipe for the repair skill book, so make sure you go ahead and pick that up. Now also, we can quite easily jump on top of Dr. O's house, and up here we can find a stim pack and some med-X. After this, we can make our way back on down to this bench over here with a coffee mug, and this is in front of House 101, and this house was home to Dr. Klein. Some of these mailboxes might have skill books inside of them, so always take a peek. It is random though. Inside of this house, we can find it is very neat and organized, and we can find a ton of liquor, kind of wine, beer, some whiskey, and also a lot of Sunset Sarsaparilla. So clearly, Dr. Klein is a big fan of Sunset Sarsaparilla and liquor. But for the most part, it's a pretty normal house. And then upstairs in the bathroom, we can find a first aid box, and in the bathtub, we can find some wine. Interestingly, this is only one of 2 houses in Higgs Village with a bathroom. Then in the office, we can find the Sync Project book chute, so make sure you pick that up. And there's also some foot lockers with some random loot. And then on the bottom of the bookcase, we can find Dr. Klein's glove. And as we move into the bedroom, we can also find Dr. Klein's scrubs. And pretty much this is how we know this house belonged to Dr. Klein. And if we put on the scrubs and the glove, it does look kind of silly, or I think I look like an absolute badass as I punch that stupid camera. After that, on the side of Dr. Klein's house, we can find a Nuka-Cola Victory in a bush, and there's also a metal box in the back with random loot. As we move over to the neighbor's house, we can find a wooden crate with random loot, and also some metal boxes in the corner here, again with random loot. And as we approach house 102, we can find a skeleton and a camera lying outside the front door. For whatever reason, as we enter this house, we can notice it is very dark inside, and there are two monitors on the wall. One is kind of dirty and broken, and the other is pristine, mimicking Dr. Mobius's own BrainBot. And with that, we can assume this house belonged to Dr. Mobius. Also, you'll notice that this house is a complete mess, and as we come up to the second floor, there is a toaster lying on the ground. We can also find a footlocker with some random loot inside of it. And over here we have like a radio and some Mentats next to the desk. And as we go into the bedroom, we can find a plethora of Mentats. And obviously, Dr. Mobius has a Mentat addiction. Over here on this little radio equipment, we can find a recipe for the science skill book, along with more Mentats. And of course, there's footlockers and stuff with random loot. Also, you can jump all the way to Dr. Mobius's house just by kind of hopping along the rooftops from house 000. And up here we can find a skeleton in a lawn chair with some footlockers surrounding him in a metal crate. Inside is just some random ammunition, and there's also some beer up here, so obviously this skeleton was, well, enjoying the world when it ended. As we come over to house 103, I really hope you have the Wild Wasteland perk, because if you do, we can come over to Gabe's doghouse and we can find Stripe. Stripe is a very cute yet very deadly miniature alpha deathclaw, and he is very strong. Now, Stripe, like I said, is an Easter egg because he's part of the Wild Wasteland perk, and if we go towards the fountain, he will run away from us, which actually makes him pretty easy to kill. And while you might think it's a glitch he runs away from the fountain, it is actually a reference to the movie Gremlins. Stripe is the main antagonist of the film, and he dies in a fountain, which is why Stripe is afraid of the fountain. Or at least Deathclaw Stripe, not Gremlin Stripe. Anyways, one of my favorite Easter eggs in all of New Vegas. After that, we can come up to Gabe's doghouse, and if we grab Gabe's bowl, this will start the quest, A Brain's Best Friend. During this quest, we have to return the dog bowl to Dr. Boris, who will start to have memories of his dog Gabe, and then he might actually feel some guilt for what he did to his poor dog. And with that, we can assume that house 103 is Dr. Boris's house. And as we enter, you will notice that the living room is fairly normal. However, there are bird cages littered throughout the entire house. So perhaps Dr. Boris was doing some kind of cruel experiments on some poor birds. Also, you'll notice that there's a very hard locked door that leads to Dr. Boris's basement. But there's a key which we can find upstairs. And as we make our way upstairs, we can find some couches, a footlocker with some caps. Over here we can find a dino toy, pretty hilarious. Also a recipe for the medicine skill book on that little shelf. And inside this bird cage on the desk, we can find Boris's basement key. And if we go down into the basement, we can find a somewhat disturbing scene. There are tons of animal cages, there's bone saws, a ripper, dried blood, and then we find it. A teddy bear that has been murdered by butter knives. Unbelievable. Dr. Boris, you monster. And with what was happening down here, we can assume that Dr. Boris may have killed some of those poor birds. And next, in the middle here, we have house 108. Now, before we go in, there's this lunchbox on the bench, and if we go to the back, we can find a camera, also a dead body over a wooden crate with some Mentats next to it. So make sure you go around and pick up those Mentats. Now, as we enter this place, there are a ton of clocks. And very interestingly, this is only one of 2 locations in all of New Vegas where we can hear ticking clocks. The only other place is the Good Springs General Store, which suggests there is in fact a working clock here, and perhaps at the Good Springs General Store, somebody fixed the clock inside. And as we enter the kitchen, we can find out that whoever lived here probably had some really bad OCD because they have meticulously laid out all of their coffee cups and all of their plates, and they were obsessed with time, apparently. And this house probably belonged to Dr. 8. And as we make our way upstairs, we will find an office room with all kinds of equipment, and then on the desk, we can find the Sync Project jukebox, so pretty darn good. Make sure you pick up that bad boy. And then in the bedroom, we can find a metal box with random loot, hockey mask, pretty interesting, and also an audio sample for the opera singer, which will upgrade the sonic emitter. And there's just all kinds of craziness scattered around the house, such as 8 intercoms in various areas, even on the floor, 8 clocks, 8 ham radios, 8 drinking glasses in the upstairs office, etc., etc. All of the 8s pointing to Dr. 8. And the next house is house 104. Nothing special outside, and as we enter, well, the bottom floor seems pretty normal. Just a kitchen, maybe there's some books on the ground, but hey, maybe it was an earthquake. But as we come up, we find a very awkward situation. We find all of these teddy bears on these stools. I decided to try and help out this poor teddy bear and put him back on his stool. But up here we find a sexually charged, fashion-centric house, probably belonging to Dr. Dala. And of course in the bedroom we can find sexy sleepwear and other pre-war clothes, and you can take it if you want it. Also worth mentioning, in the hallway with the teddy bears we can find the recipe for the speech skill book. And then back outside we can find a fake tunnel right next to Dala's house for whatever reason, and if we head over here we can find a staircase which will lead us up to some crates and other boxes that contain random loot, random ammunition, so make sure you take a look and see what you can find. Now also on this side we can jump on top of the houses just like on the other side, and here there is a duffel bag hanging between the house and this tree with random stuff inside, some stim packs and stuff, always good. And then if we jump all the way across we find that the last house, well, doesn't have anything on it, unlike Dr. Mobius's house, unfortunately. Now, outside, I wanted to see if there was anything on top of the hangar. Of course, I knew there probably wasn't, but using the reload dash glitch, we can easily get ourselves on top of the hangar, like so. Just kind of launched ourselves on that edge, and then there were some of these trauma units below me, so I just used a fat man to take care of them quite quickly, because otherwise they're kind of annoying. So big boom. But unfortunately there's nothing really of interest on top of the hangar, and interestingly if you go to the southeast corner of the hangar, you're actually considered out of bounds and you will faint because you're outside of the map boundaries, even though inside of the hangar you are not outside. And there you have it, Higgs Village. This place is freaking awesome for environmental storytelling, and that's what Fallout is so good at. And this is a perfect demonstration of that. We can really begin to understand the think tank's characters a lot better by exploring around this little cul-de-sac. If you have not been here or you don't remember this place very well, I would highly recommend going to go check it out because it is a ton of fun, even though there are no enemies here, well, besides possibly a Deathclaw, if you have the Wild Wasteland perk. It's also worth mentioning that in the announcement trailer, there was an X42 giant Robo-Scorpion that was probably planned to be here in the village, but was cut from the final game for whatever reason. Also wanted to mention that one of the zeros on Dr. O's house fell off, obviously kind of hinting towards his name. His real name is Dr. Zero, not Dr. O. And then if we go in Dr. O's house, the dead Securitron supposedly will disappear when you enter a second time. But I could not make the Securitrons disappear, well, ever. So I don't know why it says that on the wiki. I re-entered the house several times. I re-entered Higgs Village several times. And every time the Securitrons were there. So I don't know why the wiki says this, because this is just not true, at least for me. Perhaps it's a glitch, perhaps it differs player to player. If you have any more information about this, please let me know in the comment section below. And finally, the last interesting thing about this place, it is named after the physicist Peter Higgs, who proposed the existence of a field that would utilize weak symmetry in the fundamental forces to allow massive objects, What that means, I don't really know, but really interesting. Higgs was not a household name until 2012. And Fallout New Vegas, when this DLC came out, it was 2011. So you could say Old World Blues was the real OG. And on March 14th, 2013, CERN confirmed the existence of the Higgs boson, leading to Higgs receiving the Nobel Prize in Physics that same year, and Peter Higgs would unfortunately pass away on April 8th, 2024. And that pretty much sums up Higgs Village. This has been one of my favorite locations yet in the unexplored Mojave. And while this location is awesome, everyone who watches this is even more awesome. You guys are so frackin' awesome, and I love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for all of the support, commenting, liking the video, and all of the subscribers. Honestly, guys, none of this would be possible without you. Thank you guys so much for the support. And real quick, if you are curious to Dr. Boris's reaction when you return the dog bowl, I will leave that at the end of the video so you can watch it. If you're not interested, click off. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching. As always, guys, until next time.
What? Why, yes, it is. I used to leave it outside his doghouse, chock full of chems, before the cybernetic modifications, of course. And no matter how chemmed the food, he would always eat it, and his tail would wag, even while you know, I'm having the most perplexing feeling squiggling through my biogel. I can't quite pin it down. Why, yes, Gabe. No matter how awful my day had been, he was always waiting there. How odd. My gel is decoagulating. And when I would talk to him about Betsy, and how Marcus would beat on me and call me Smarty's sissy pants, he'd just sit there, head on my knee, and... If you don't mind, I'll take that bowl. Just need to remove it. Put it away, somewhere out of radar range. For some reason, its similarity to the crater shape of Big Mountain is starting to fill up all available cognitive spaces. That, combined with my own overwhelming feeling of having done something terrible, the two were hitting me with unexpected force. As odd as it is, I believe that is the conclusion. And I wonder why it didn't hit me before, until I saw that memory in your hands. This sensation is unpleasant. I don't care for it. I don't care for this place either. And I feel as if we've forgotten something. Still, it is no matter. Crush the feeling down. Crush it down. Push it into the loop. Yes. Forgotten. Almost. Yes? I do not need to remember anymore. Not today.